9 a.m. The Grand Army marched into the barren battlefield, leaving blood-red footprints on the crimson soil. From the dwarves, they learned that wounds could become infected and poisoned. The number of living creatures in the army was reduced. To minimize potential accidents, Fang Hao's body remained in the fortress outside the battlefield, controlling the demon puppet, riding a bone horse, and following the army forward. After many days of diligent practice, Fang Hao's ability to control the puppet became increasingly proficient. Even now, he could control both his body and the puppet simultaneously, achieving a state of dual-mindedness without any delay. However, controlling both sides in combat simultaneously was still quite taxing. What he could do was focus on precise control of one side while slowing down the other. The army advanced. After marching 500 meters, something happened. Monsters resembling decaying corpses crawled out of the ground, looking at the approaching undead army from a distance. Corrupted dwarf, Tier 4. Corrupted giant bear, Tier 3. Corrupted warrior, Tier 5. Corrupted horse, Tier 2. Corrupted. It seemed these were the corrupted corpses the dwarf spoke of. If someone was infected and didn't receive treatment, they would also transform into these monsters. But these corrupted monsters were significantly different from ordinary corrupted corpses. Their bodies weren't stiff. In fact, they were even more agile than normal people and possessed immense strength. Looking at these monsters, Fang Hao recalled the corrupted troops he encountered in the Dragon Burial Cave. They were extremely similar to the monsters appearing before him and were equally agile. The reason for the corruption should be related to the corpses of powerful species. More and more corrupted monsters crawled out. There were corrupted animals, but more were corrupted soldiers wearing tattered armor. Various different creatures were mixed together, their numbers reaching nearly 10,000, and they were still appearing continuously. No wonder no one dared to enter here until now. These corrupted forces alone were not something ordinary powers could handle. Prepare to attack. A hoarse voice came from the demon puppet's mouth. Or rather, not from its mouth, as the puppet's hollow jaw did not open. Swish, swish, swish. The shields of the skeleton warriors were raised, forming a layered and interlocking iron wall. War drums. Dong, dong, dong. The undead war drums sounded, and a grayish-white aura spread, enveloping the undead army. First rank, second rank, unleash lightning strike. Fang Hao continued to give orders. The messenger spurred his horse and delivered the orders in all directions. The skeleton warriors of the first and second ranks. A lightning spear, shimmering with blue lightning, appeared in their right hands. Then, the lightning strikes from the two ranks were hurled directly forward. Boom, 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 sizzle. The lightning spears struck the ranks of the corrupted creatures, sending large numbers of enemies flying. The current spread rapidly, connecting the nearby corrupted creatures. Their bodies trembled as if electrocuted, and large numbers of corrupted creatures melted into the dark red soil under the lightning strike, like melting butter. After 2 rounds of lightning strike, large numbers of corrupted oddities still charged forward fearlessly. Lightning spears also began to appear in the right hands of the skeleton warriors and skeleton spearmen in the rear. They hurled the lightning spears in their hands, killing the corrupted creatures that charged like rabid dogs. Bang, 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 bang. Soon, the corrupted monsters had charged to the front of the formation. Their bodies slammed hard against the warriors' iron wall. Relying on their powerful charge, many corrupted creatures directly broke through the first rank of the shield formation. They rushed into the ranks. But behind the first rank iron wall shield formation, there were still the second and third rank shield formations, and even spear shields behind the sword shields. The corrupted monsters that had just rushed in were immediately hacked at by weapons from all directions, turning into streaks of ash. At the same time, the skeleton archers, under the command of the heavy arrows, had already begun rounds of volleys. The magic missiles of the undead mages, above the army, formed a dark sky and arced down onto the enemies in front, causing widespread damage. The skeleton army remained in place, not advancing, resisting the continuously appearing corrupted monsters. The army was like an unmoving mountain, with only the messengers constantly moving within the ranks, relaying one order after another. The sound of battle grew louder and louder. The corrupted monsters in the depths also crawled out one after another. At this time, there were no more corrupted beast monsters. Those that appeared were all corrupted human soldiers in uniform attire. After they came out, they simply searched for and picked up the decayed weapons around them and continued to launch attacks. The sound of crashing against the shield formation echoed loudly. Corrupted monsters continuously rushed in through various means and were then killed. The archers and mages in the rear were also constantly outputting damage. The sky was like a dome, with magic missiles and arrows flying in the air. 3 hours later, the battle gradually neared its end. The dark red earth was left scarred and battered. Looking out, there were charred, sunken pits, and the ground was littered with arrows. This battle was a war of attrition. The corrupted monsters held an absolute advantage in this land. If Fang Hao had brought an army of living creatures today, then the rule of infecting living creatures within the battlefield would be extremely disadvantageous for the attacking side. As long as someone was injured, they would be infected and turn into corrupted monsters. This was more like a scenario from Resident Evil, where the monsters would only increase with the battle, ultimately becoming an endless, invincible war. Fortunately, the army Fang Hao brought was an undead army. When the two sides collided, the bones would not turn into corrupted monsters. This eliminated many concerns. After the battle ended and the corrupted monsters died, their bodies would turn into a pile of decayed ash. No corpses were left behind, but quite a few rare resources were dropped. Traces of death, shadow stone, essence of magic were in large quantities. The value of rare resources exceeded most spoils of war. This was also a significant gain from this battle. Advance forward, clear the battlefield along the way, and be careful of enemies. Fang Hao gave the order. The army continued to advance. The shield warriors, holding iron shields, directly bypassed the battlefield. Meanwhile, the soldiers in the rear began to collect the spoils of war and arrows scattered all over the ground. The army continued forward and encountered several more waves of attacks from corrupted monsters. After repelling them one by one, at 4 p.m., a collapsed stone tower appeared in front of the army. The stone tower was broken in the middle, and the upper part of the tower body had fallen to the side, mostly buried in the ground. The stone tower was severely weathered and very dilapidated. The sudden appearance of a tower here was still somewhat curious. Lord, there are no more corrupted monsters appearing nearby. There might be some threat within the stone tower. Black Sword walked over from the front and said to Fang Hao. This was indeed a point of suspicion. Corrupted monsters had appeared all along the way, but there was no danger near this place. It was very likely that there were more powerful enemies nearby who had already eliminated and cleared away the corpses before the living creatures could transform into corrupted monsters. That's why this area had no corrupted monsters crawling out. All right, arrange for someone to approach and take a look. Fang Hao continued. Yes, Lord. Black Sword agreed and immediately went to make preparations. Before long, 2 skeleton warriors walked directly out of the army and approached the stone tower. As the skeleton warriors approached, their metal boots clanked on the hard stone steps. Just as they approached the hollow archway of the stone tower, the entire structure of the stone tower suddenly trembled violently. Rustle, rustle, rustle. There was a rustling sound, as if countless tentacles were rapidly climbing, making one's scalp tingle. Black Sword gave the order to retreat. As the 2 skeleton warriors turned around, a giant dark red centipede suddenly shot out from the top of the broken stone tower, opening its huge mouth and swallowing the 2 skeleton warriors, chewing their bones and swallowing them into its belly. Carrion Centipede, Tier 10. The centipede was over 10 meters long, its body covered with dark red scales, and its belly was covered with dense, thin legs wrapped around the stone tower. The edges of the centipede's giant mouth were lined with serrated fangs. While chewing on the crushed bones, it looked at the undead army that had appeared below. For a moment, both sides were stunned in place, with neither side initiating an attack first. Fang Hao's eyes widened, looking at the centipede before him with some surprise. Judging by the name, carrion centipede. It should be it that ate all the corrupted monsters nearby. That's why no corrupted monsters appeared near the stone tower. Seeing the creature observing the undead army from above with its round, insect-like eyes, it was clear that this centipede possessed a certain level of intelligence. Fang Hao was observing, but the next second, the carrion centipede slithered down from the stone tower and charged directly towards them. Looking at the continuously wriggling serrated fangs and the speed of its attack, it was clearly not here to negotiate. Fang Hao immediately ordered, "Attack!" Clatter! All the skeleton soldiers drew their weapons, and lightning spears had already appeared in the right hands of the first rank of skeleton warriors. Just as they were about to throw at the target, they saw the carrion centipede plunge its head down. Its entire body burrowed directly into the ground. The ground began to quickly bulge, rapidly approaching this side. "Watch the ground!" Fang Hao shouted loudly. But as soon as he finished speaking, he saw the continuously bulging mound of earth had already reached the bottom of his carriage. Not daring to hesitate, he flapped his bat wings, and his entire body directly flew up. Just as he flew up, below the carrion centipede broke through the ground, its body rising vertically, swallowing the carriage and the bone horse whole. All around, skeleton warriors gathered, and dense arrows also shot towards the emerged centipede. Clang, clang, clang. The arrows struck the centipede's scales, making a clashing sound. Seeing more and more people gathering, the centipede plunged back underground. The mound of earth kept swirling under the army's feet, throwing the army into disarray. Fang Hao flapped his bat wings, hovering in midair. He was somewhat surprised that the carrion centipede had attacked him first. It must have heard him giving orders and prioritized killing him. Quite intelligent. A Tier 10 mutated monster, coupled with high intelligence, was indeed somewhat difficult to deal with. However, there was only one such monster, and it didn't pose any threat to them. He flew down, and at the rear of the army, he gave a few more orders. Nisbet and the bone dragon, who were accompanying the army, began to approach the central area, standing among the large army, waiting for the centipede's next attack. Soon, the centipede, which had been moving underground, found an opportunity to attack again. Its body suddenly shot out of the ground, swallowing several skeleton warriors in one gulp. Having succeeded in one strike, it was about to burrow back underground. But out of the corner of its eye, the centipede saw a skeleton with a dog's head pointing at it not far from the ranks. Immediately, a dark cloud appeared above its head. Bang! Its body, which could have broken through the ground and burrowed down, instead slammed directly into the earth. With a muffled thud, the centipede hit itself, making it a bit dizzy. The centipede was somewhat stunned, not understanding why it couldn't break through the ground. It tried again. Bang! The result was still the same. Its forehead hit the ground heavily, making it dizzy. And just then, in the sky, a giant bone dragon swooped down, its two dragon claws grabbing the centipede's body. It carried it up into the sky. In the air, the dragon claws pulled hard, trying to tear the centipede's body apart. The centipede struggled painfully, coiling its body around the dragon claws and gnawing on them with its serrated fangs. But the dragon claws were already equipped with iron armor. Even with sharp fangs, it could only twist and deform the iron armor. As the centipede struggled, its body was directly torn in half. Green blood fell from the sky. The centipede's body was in two halves, but it still didn't give up struggling, constantly attacking the bone dragon, trying to escape its restraint and survive. But the bone dragon's strength and advantage in the air were completely superior to the centipede's. The bone dragon circled in the air with the centipede, and at the rear of the undead army, a large number of skeleton giant bats and skeleton pseudo-dragon guards immediately swarmed up, surrounding and covering the two sections of the centipede's body, tearing and pecking at the flesh and blood on its body. The dark red scales on the centipede's body were torn off piece by piece, and flesh and blood, along with green blood, continuously fell from the sky. The centipede's struggles became weaker and weaker, finally limply hanging from the dragon claws. It was then that the bone dragon released its claws and threw it down from the air. Nisbet had been waiting nearby, and as soon as it landed, several giant axes chopped down on its head, directly splitting the centipede in half on the spot. The centipede's head was no longer struggling, but the remaining sections of its tail were still continuously twisting. To be safe, the soldiers hacked at the tail sections again. They stopped attacking only after the centipede's body was completely still. Fang Hao and a few others walked over from the rear, and after confirming it was dead, they began to clear the battlefield. "Collect the corpse and take it back," Fang Hao said. Although he didn't like troops with a centipede appearance, but its tier 10 strength, coupled with some inherent characteristics, still gave it a certain advantage. He would take it back first to expand the number of troop types in the skeleton conversion field, and then decide whether to recruit them depending on the situation. The troops began to act, clearing the battlefield and tending to the injured. Nearby, 2 orc messengers were injured, and signs of decay began to appear at the wounds. While ordering the retreat, Fang Hao used healing to treat the orcs' injuries. Just as the 2 dwarves had said, holy light magic had a strong effect on the corruption here. The decay at the wounds did not spread, and the wounds began to heal. After the battle, it was already 7 p.m. Fang Hao marked the location of the stone tower on the map and returned directly to the camp. Upon returning to the camp, he handed over the work to Black Sword and others, and he himself entered the teleportation light curtain with 2 heroes and the centipede's corpse. "Do you think this thing is tasty?" Anjia followed behind Fang Hao. Fang Hao ignored her and directly ordered someone to throw the centipede into the conversion pool. The next day, early morning, Fang Hao woke up early and went to the skeleton conversion field. The centipede converted yesterday should be finished. Upon arriving at the conversion field, he already saw the centipede clinging to the nearby building. Undead Centipede, Tier 9. Undead Centipede Beast, Tier 9. Faction, Undead. Racial traits, Undead, Hollow Skeleton. Light Weakness, Centipede, Subterranean Digger. Skills, Bite, Swallowed. Innate abilities, Advanced Crawling Mastery, Advanced Hunting Mastery. Centipede, can crawl on the ground, walls, and ceilings to hunt prey. Subterranean Digger, strong jaws excavate winding tunnels underground, approaching prey quickly and stealthily. Bite, melee attack. Strong teeth can easily bite through enemy armor and bones. Swallow, the centipede beast swallows small enemies it is grappling. Note, skeleton units converted from corpses still retain the characteristics and attack methods they had in life. The centipede beast before him was somewhat different from the skeletons he had converted in the past. Its appearance was more like an arthropod insect without flesh and blood, possessing a shriveled, hard outer shell. Even though it had become an undead unit, the dense, numerous legs under its abdomen were still somewhat unsettling to look at. He arranged for it to be stationed outside the city, accompanying the skeleton soldiers on patrol duties. After reviewing the units converted yesterday, Fang Hao's initial curiosity waned. After breakfast, he released the demon teleportation again and arrived at the Outland Battlefield Fortress. Just like yesterday, as soon as he entered the commander's hall, he saw the waiting dwarf, Ironbeard, Belagar. It seemed these dwarves had already discussed the outcome yesterday and were waiting for him here early. Seeing Fang Hao enter, the dwarf sitting on the chair quickly stood up. "Mr. Fang Hao." His attitude was considerably more respectful than yesterday, which allowed Fang Hao to guess their decision. "Morning, Chief Belgar." Fang Hao also greeted with a smile. After speaking, he walked directly to the seat and sat down. Seeing Fang Hao seated, Belgar also sat down. The few dwarves behind him still stood respectfully to the side, remaining silent. He still needed to continue exploring the Outland battlefield, so Fang Hao didn't have time to beat around the bush with him. He asked directly, "Chief Belgar, how have you considered it?" Belagar's eyes flickered. He finally said in a deep voice, "I still want to confirm, if we are willing to join your territory, where will we be assigned?" Joining the territory meant becoming a member of it. They would need to work for Fang Hao, the Lord, and would also have a new place to live. If possible, they hoped to choose a place suitable for themselves. Coincidentally, not long ago my army leveled the Bloody Mountains. There are an astonishing number of veins there. If you are willing, I can arrange for you to settle there, Fang Hao said calmly. These dwarves came from 8 Peaks Mountain. As the name suggested, they lived in mountainous areas. In the Bloody Mountains, the entire population of trolls had been killed, leaving only 70,000. It was indeed suitable for these dwarves to settle there, perfectly meeting their living habits. However, upon hearing Fang Hao's answer, Belagar's expression changed slightly. Even though he hadn't been to the Bloody Mountains, with the existence of the Merchant Alliance buildings, he knew the Bloody Mountains were where the trolls lived. Trolls were inherently brutal and naturally powerful warriors. Moreover, the troll leader, Caius, was an orange hero. Even 8 Peaks Mountain in the past was unwilling to deal with or conflict with the trolls. Yet, he didn't expect that the young human before him would casually mention that he had already leveled the Bloody Mountains. This truly fit the war style of the undead race. Seeing Belagar's expression constantly changing, Fang Hao asked, "Does Chief Belgar have any other questions?" Belgar confirmed again, "How many trolls are left?" 70,000. Belagar's heart tightened even more. This was no different from extermination. In such a large area, only 70,000 people remained. This was a god of slaughter. Fortunately, they hadn't conflicted with Fang Hao. Otherwise, they would have been wiped out by this undead army in minutes. After a moment of silence, Belgar finally made up his mind and said, "Lord, we are willing to join your territory and obey your command." After speaking, he immediately stood up and led the dwarves behind him to bow to Fang Hao. "Good. Welcome to join us, Belgar. Sign this. When you return, you can take your people to pack up. I will arrange for someone to take you to the Bloody Fortress," Fang Hao said, finding a purple hero scroll in his lord's book and handing it to Belgar. The highest level of hero scrolls available on the market reached the purple level. As for orange and dark gold scrolls, they were not sold on the market at all. According to the merchants, reaching the level of an orange hero meant being the leader of a faction. No one would be willing to let orange scrolls circulate on the market, so orange scrolls did not appear. Seeing the purple hero scroll, Belagar's expression turned a little grim again. Once signed, he would lose his freedom and forever obey Fang Hao's command. However, he had no other choice. If he had a choice, he wouldn't have come here early this morning to wait for Fang Hao. He directly cut his finger and pressed it onto the hero scroll. A purple light appeared on the scroll and directly entered Belagar's body. At this point, the contract was completed. Ironbeard, Belgar, current loyalty to you is 65. That wasn't too low. Fang Hao immediately opened Belagar's attributes to check. Ironbeard, Belgar, purple tier 4 hero. Faction, dwarf. Template, purple. Racial traits, living being, strong physique, royal bloodline. Legion talents, never defeated, dwarven leader. Skills, ancestral hammer, angry leap slash, firearms mastery, molten power, molten mastered. Innate skills, advanced strength mastery, advanced defense mastery, advanced tactics mastery, advanced command mastery, domain forging mastery. Strong physique, dwarf physique plus 5%. Royal bloodline, melee ability plus 10%, dwarf rallying power plus 50%. Never defeated. This unit leading dwarves will not break down for any reason. Dwarven leader. Only strong leadership skills and an iron will can lead your people to victory. Leading dwarves. All attributes plus 50%. Ancestral hammer. Smash the weapon in hand towards the enemy in front, dealing 100% damage. Additionally, for every 5 points of rage, the critical hit chance of ancestral hammer increases by 1%, requires equipping an axe or hammer weapon. Angry leap slash. Leap into the air, dealing 80% damage to the enemy and reducing their movement speed by 60% for 3 seconds. Firearms mastery. All firearm equipment and machinery effects are increased by an additional 20%. Molten power. Masterful control over fire. Molten master. Comes with the Mountain Belly Great Furnace building blueprint. Upon recruiting the hero, the building blueprint is automatically unlocked. Description: I am the rightful heir of 8 Peaks Mountain. This is the will of the ancestors. Seeing Belagar's attributes, Fang Hao was somewhat surprised. The dwarf in front of him, wearing a horned helmet and with an axe beside him, actually possessed royal blood. Looking at the description, It also involved a dispute over inheritance. However, even Meat Fist Caius of the Bloody Mountains was an orange hero. Belgar, the rightful heir, only had the strength of Purple Tier 4. No wonder he was driven out by his people and lost his heir status. Another thing that surprised Fang Hao was Belgar also came with a building blueprint. After recruiting him, his lord's book also unlocked this blueprint. This was the same as Nelson. It's just that Nelson unlocked the organ museum, while Belgar seemed to be a broken iron furnace. This wasn't urgent. After the dwarves arrived at the Bloody Mountains, Fang Hao could directly teleport there and build this furnace for them. Dwarves had higher forging technology, and presumably, they could refine fine iron. After checking the attributes, Fang Hao continued, "All right, Belgar, go back and tell your people to prepare everything they need to carry. When the time comes, I will arrange for someone to lead you to the Bloody Mountains." "Yes, Lord," Belgar replied respectfully. As a descendant of royalty, from being driven out to being homeless, his self-esteem had been constantly battered. The miserable state of his people and the desire for revenge for 8 Peaks Mountain made him grit his teeth and persevere. Here, it was indeed not suitable for his people to survive. Relying on scavenging broken equipment from the Outland battlefield to remake, they would never have a chance to reclaim everything they had lost in their lifetime. Joining Fang Hao and moving to a place more suitable for their survival was the only way to change their situation. There was no second choice, and Fang Hao wouldn't give him a second choice. Seeing that Fang Hao had nothing else to say, Belgar led his people out of the commander's hall and returned to their camp to prepare to leave. After seeing off the dwarves, Fang Hao released the puppet. Its bat wings spread behind it, and it flew towards the location of the stone tower. The road from the fortress to the stone tower. After clearing the monsters, the road was leveled and marked with signposts. A steady stream of construction materials departed from the fortress and were transported to the stone tower. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The puppet's bat wings were the wings of the orange hero, Duke Red. Its flight speed was very fast. It quickly arrived at the location of the stone tower. The army had already set out, continuing to clear the corrupted enemies that appeared ahead. "Lord." As Fang Hao landed, Black Sword and others also stepped forward to salute. "All right, keep advancing," Fang Hao said. Black Sword responded, and the army continued to move forward. As the army advanced deeper, the tier of corrupted monsters increased, and their numbers also grew. In addition to the corrupted soldiers on the edges, some corrupted trolls also appeared. But without exception, the weapons and armor of these corrupted monsters had already rotted. Killing them was not difficult at all. Relying on the advantage in numbers and weapons, they pushed forward all the way. Because they needed to lay a good foundation for later transportation, the clearing of monsters was very thorough. No corrupted monster was spared to ensure the safety of the rear transportation. 2 hours later, ahead of the army, a deserted village appeared. The brick walls had collapsed, and the houses within the village had also turned into ruins under the erosion of time. Bricks and stones were scattered, and the beams had turned to ash. The transportation team needed markers. That is to say, the teams transporting materials later needed iconic buildings to determine their location on the map. Unlike traversers like Fang Hao, who had a light spot on the large map showing their location, local residents needed to rely on landmark buildings to identify locations and directions. Therefore, the village in front of them was a very iconic building. Approaching the village, one could see traces left on the walls. It seemed this village was not just eroded by time. Many signs of battle could be seen. The village was completely silent. Because it was too quiet, it instead made people feel a sense of danger. From the rear of the army, 50 undead mages were selected. Magic missiles arced and smashed towards the village. Bang, bang, bang. After a cloud of dust, countless large bat-like creatures flew up from the ground. They circled densely in the air. As expected, there are monsters, and flying ones at that. Lurking Demon Bat, Tier 8. This type of monster was massive, with 2 huge wings, circling in the sky, very much resembling a fish called a manta ray that Fang Hao had seen at the aquarium. Because this type of fish was very different from ordinary fish, people also called it a devilfish. Their bodies, like devilfish, were composed of soft tissue and muscle. Spreading their fins like bat wings, they could fly into the air. These lurking demon bats looked like dark leather cloaks. They clung to the walls and dark places of the village, ready to hunt any prey that wandered by. They had very strong camouflage abilities, only revealing their grayish-white undersides when they flew into the sky. From yesterday's centipede beast to today's lurking demon bats, it made one feel that the creatures that could survive here had undergone severe mutations. Power and ugliness were the first impressions these monsters gave. The lurking demon bats circled continuously in the air, numbering several thousand. Their ugly heads stared at the skeleton army below. The threat posed by the skeleton army prevented them from attacking, but they also showed no intention of leaving. Ranged archers attack. Pseudo-dragons and giant bats, prepare to encircle and eliminate these monsters, Fang Hao directly ordered. Yes, Lord. The messenger immediately relayed the order, and the sound of bowstrings tightening echoed among the archers. Immediately after, dense arrows covered the lurking demon bats in the air. Puff, puff, puff. In the blink of an eye, the lurking demon bats were turned into pincushions and fell from the sky. The remaining surviving demon bats did not launch an attack and began to scatter in all directions. On both sides, a large number of skeleton pseudo-dragon guards and skeleton giant bats flew out again, starting to chase and kill the escaping demon bats. They devoured them completely. The bones of these lurking demon bats were very small. Most of their body tissue was soft tissue and muscle. After being completely devoured, they were like a mouse that had been skinned. The battle ended quickly. Only a few skeleton giant bats were lost, with no other casualties. The deeper they went, the more corrupted enemies there were. Strange and bizarre, various mutated giant insects also launched attacks on this suddenly appearing undead army. On the third day of entering the outland battlefield, following the marked locations on the map, the main army finally approached the location of the temple. The outland battlefield was vast. The main army did not clear the entire area, but rather followed a route. They cleared a path leading to the temple. Lord, we can see the temple ahead, someone reported. Fang Hao nodded and looked up the mountain, where he saw a magnificent palace. On the mountain, the palace complexes and tall towers stood high, with majestic pavilions. The palace roofs were covered with glazed tiles, and jade railings encircled the buildings. However, they had been neglected for too long. The walls were already covered with a layer of iron-colored rust. Even so, standing below felt like looking up at a heavenly palace, grand and imposing. Continue forward, be careful of enemies on the way. With the command given, the army continued to advance. Below the mountain was a city surrounded by walls. The city walls still stood tall, but the wood on the city gate had rotted, and various metal parts, covered in rust, were scattered everywhere. Sir, there are some special circumstances ahead. Commander Black Sword requests your presence, a soldier reported again. Fang Hao controlled the puppet, staying in the middle of the army. Hearing the soldier's words, he flapped his wings and flew to the front of the formation. Black Sword and the others were standing outside the city gate, looking inside. Fang Hao landed beside them. He was slightly stunned by the scene inside the city. In the open space within the city walls, countless golden-armored soldiers were kneeling neatly. Infected Temple Guard, Tier 10. Infected Temple Knight, Tier 10. The enemy types were mainly three: Infected Temple Guard, Infected Temple Standard Bearer, and Infected Temple Knight. These soldiers were tall and muscular, kneeling there with straight backs, their right hands holding a halberd resting on the ground. Among these troops, some held flagpoles, but the flags at the top had long since rotted away, leaving only bare poles. The golden-armored soldiers had been kneeling for who knows how many years, covered in dust, their armor mottled. Through the gaps in the armor, one could see rotten linen clothes and blackened skin. Since the enemy's tier and name were displayed, it meant that these individuals still possessed combat capabilities. No need to probe. These enemies still have combat power, and they have all reached Tier 10 strength. Prepare for battle, Fang Hao said directly. Yes, sir, Black Sword replied. He began issuing commands. All soldiers started to move, preparing to attack. The enemies were ahead, maintaining a dormant state. This, however, gave their side an advantage. Once everything was ready, the first to move were swarms of skeleton giant bats. Their short hind legs gripped the dynamite as they flew towards the golden-armored soldiers ahead. As soon as they flew over the city wall, the golden-armored soldiers who were kneeling began to move. They slowly stood up, their empty pupils looking at the swarming bats in the sky. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The golden-armored soldiers' equipped crossbows had long since rotted away, so they could only throw some javelins that hadn't completely decomposed at the sky. But it didn't have much effect. At this moment, behind the golden-armored soldiers, a large number of infected eagle-type units flew from the base of the mountain, heading towards them. They became entangled with the skeleton giant bats. However, the number of eagle-type units was far less than the number of skeleton giant bats. When the skeleton giant bats reached above the golden-armored soldiers, dynamite fell from the sky like rain, clattering to the ground. After completing their mission, the skeleton giant bats had no intention of staying or engaging. They left as they came, quickly returning to the rear of the Undead formation. And those eagle-type units were also completely devoured by the swarming skeleton giant bats. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. After the first dynamite explosion, continuous explosions echoed within the city walls. Dust billowed, and the entire ground trembled. When the explosions gradually stopped, the ground was covered with the broken limbs and remnants of golden-armored soldiers. But after all, they were Tier 10 units, and their basic attributes held a great advantage. A large number of golden-armored soldiers still survived. Compared to the effect of the previous bombing of the Troll Coalition army, the survival rate of the golden-armored soldiers was much higher than that of the trolls. Even the infected soldiers, feeling no pain and lacking most body parts, were still launching counterattacks. After the explosion, the golden-armored soldiers began to attack the skeleton army. In the bone army, Black Sword also issued the attack order. Attack! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lightning strikes, arrows, and magic missiles began to pour into the enemy's area. The difference in numbers made this battle without any suspense. Every golden-armored soldier who rushed out of the city gate was hit by at least 100 magic spells and 1,000 arrows. The city gate was like a death barrier. Those who rushed out fell to the ground and died in large numbers, turning into piles of ashes. Only the heavily damaged armor remained, gradually piling up into a small hill. After several rounds of bombardment, all the enemies were eliminated, leaving only equipment and ashes on the ground. After the battle, everyone began to collect the spoils. In addition to the shadow stones and traces of death that dropped from killing monsters along the way, there were also many traces of prayer and traces of deity. If traces were divided into common and rare, then these two would definitely be the rarest trace resources. After collecting the spoils, everyone continued into the city. The path leading to the palace at the summit was a steep stone staircase. After confirming that there were no dangers within the city, everyone began to advance towards the summit. The army stepped on the stone steps, moving quickly upwards. Finally, they arrived at the palace. The temple was far grander and more majestic than what was seen from below the mountain. In front of the temple stood a bronze gate, the sheer size of which was already astonishing. Originally, they thought the mountain wasn't large, but in fact, the architecture was about the same size as the mountain itself. The bronze gate was carved with various complex patterns. Some totems could be discerned, and one could also see tall deities looking down at their small followers. There were no trigger mechanisms on the gate. Skeleton soldiers were arranged to push the bronze gate with force. Accompanied by a piercing sound, the bronze gate slowly opened a crack. Behind the gate was a magnificent hall. The ceiling and walls were covered with a large number of luminous stones, allowing this temple, which had been silent for many years, to still be brightly lit. The stone pillars of the temple were carved with lifelike sculptures, and the walls on both sides were also carved with numerous figures and animal images. And at the end of the murals and reliefs, a giant surrounded by lightning was carved, sitting on the divine mountain, revered and worshipped by tens of thousands. It seemed it really was a giant deity. just as Fang Hao was focusing his attention on the murals on both sides. Whoosh! A sound of something cutting through the air suddenly rang out. Fang Hao's heart tightened, but he saw a blue beam of light suddenly shoot out from a corner. However, it didn't hit him. Instead, it hit the undead troops who were entering at the entrance. Bang! The blue beam of light exploded instantly, killing nearly 100 undead warriors who had just entered. They were blown to pieces, their scattered bones lying everywhere. Fang Hao leaped back, using his bat wings to retreat directly to the entrance. And his gaze immediately looked towards the corner from which the blue light beam had come. He saw a tall man, approaching the size of a troll. He was wearing blue scale armor and had a large cloak behind him. The man had a thick beard, but his eyes were not as empty as those of the people outside. Lord of Thunder, quasi-deity. Seeing the name and tier of the Lord of Thunder, Fang Hao frowned. Quasi-deity. He had been reading a lot of original books recently, and there were some vague descriptions among them. Quasi-deities were also called heroic deities. The culmination of a hero was a heroic deity. Another type of quasi-deity was the offspring of a union between a mortal and a deity. Because they had divine blood, they didn't need to advance like heroes, but were born with great power. Could it be that the Lord of Thunder, who was close to the size of a troll, was the son of some deity in the mortal realm? In this temple, which had been silent for countless years, there was a living quasi-deity, which was truly beyond Fang Hao's expectations. Gu neighbors to know, all the enemies encountered along the way were all corrupted and infected monsters, more like zombies, all dead. It's quite surprising that you would come here. The Lord of Thunder walked over slowly, his tone without any ripple. What? You knew we would come? Fang Hao also felt curious. I heard the prayers of my servants. They said there was an undead army slaughtering their people and begged for my help, the Lord of Thunder said. Fang Hao's brows furrowed. Are you the giant spirit god that the trolls speak of? Don't I look like him? You are quite different from what I imagined. Fang Hao continued to reply. One must know that in the temple where the trolls worshipped the giant spirit god, that huge heart was already larger than a human's size. In his imagination, the giant spirit god was at least a giant several dozen meters tall. But the one before him was only a little over 5 meters tall. Comparatively speaking, I still prefer this current body. It doesn't consume too much energy. The Lord of Thunder's tone remained calm. Then why didn't you help them and just watch me flatten the troll territory? Fang Hao continued to ask, his hand behind his back, making a gesture to Black Sword outside the door. The Lord of Thunder seemed to have noticed Fang Hao's small action, but he didn't make any move. Instead, he continued, compared to them, I would rather bestow my power upon you, a worshipper with ambition and intellect. Fang Hao's eyes narrowed slightly, looking at the quasi-deity before him. The other party spoke calmly, but the arrogance and indifference in his words were not concealed in the slightest. He had abandoned the former trolls and now wanted to support the trolls' enemy to become new believers. But Fang Hao was somewhat curious about the power he spoke of. What do I need to do, and what can I gain? What you need to do is very simple. Set up my statue in your territory and let your residents believe in me, the Lord of Thunder. In return, you will receive the power I bestow. One day, when I attain godhood, you will become the sole representative of the deity, the Lord of Thunder said, spreading his hands forward, his expression fervent. Looking at the agitated Lord of Thunder, Fang Hao was not moved. To put it bluntly, the quasi-deity before him needed the faith of his people to help him attain some status. Leaving aside whether he could attain that status in the future, just the way the Lord of Thunder treated his troll believers. If he agreed, then his territory wouldn't belong to the Lord of Thunder before him, and he would become a puppet lord at his mercy. Moreover, this way of speaking, this rhetoric, how was it so similar to the big promises his former boss used to make? Both hard to swallow and insulting to his intelligence. Well, I feel what you said makes a lot of sense, Fang Hao echoed. The Lord of Thunder's expression brightened. Of course. But in the next second, Fang Hao took a step out of the temple gate. At the same time, he heard a cold voice from outside the door. Kill him. Whoosh. The undead soldiers, like a flood from an opened gate, surged through the massive bronze door. In an instant, The undead filled the room, raising their weapons and charging towards the Lord of Thunder. Seeing the undead charging towards him, the Lord of Thunder realized that he had been tricked by that kid. His face immediately showed anger. "You're courting death. I will turn your territory into scorched earth." The Lord of Thunder roared. He pointed his left hand forward. Countless blue lightning bolts shot out from all directions, sweeping towards the attacking undead warriors. Instantly, large numbers of undead warriors were struck by the lightning, their bones instantly falling apart. Even the shields in their hands melted like lava under the lightning attack. The skeleton warriors' shields were blue equipment obtained by Fang Hao, made of pure iron and very heavy. But under the attack of the Lord of Thunder, they began to melt. One could imagine how great the power of this lightning was. Blue electric arcs spread on the ground, and the approaching skeleton warriors died in large numbers. Fang Hao, Black Sword, and the others stood outside the door, watching the scene before them in surprise. A quasi-deity possessed such powerful strength, and the power brought by releasing skills far exceeded the power of all the skills he had seen. Killing people was even done in large numbers. Black Sword, bring up all the enemies from below. I don't believe that with so many people, we can't wear him down and kill him, Fang Hao said. Yes, sir. Black Sword began to give orders. The army, following the stone steps up the mountain, formed a dense, long line, waiting for the space ahead to clear up so they could continue to enter and engage the enemy in battle. In the hall, countless skeleton giant bats also rushed into the hall, starting to harass and attack from the air. The Lord of Thunder's face became increasingly grim. He released a lightning barrier around his body, blocking the bone bats and skeleton pseudo-dragons diving down from the air. The lightning barrier was like a large net crackling with lightning, completely enveloping the Lord of Thunder. The skeleton giants, like moths to a flame, rushed towards the electric net. Although the Lord of Thunder was not harmed in any way, his expression became increasingly serious. There were so many enemies outside, they couldn't be killed completely. He also noticed Fang Hao and the others outside the door in the distance. Several times he tried to rush out and kill Fang Hao. But whether in the air or on the ground, each time he was pushed back to his original position by the massive undead soldiers. He couldn't get out, and the other party had difficulty attacking him. At this moment, amidst the thunder, another lightning bolt was released, and skeleton warriors fell in large numbers. Gurgle, gurgle. Several cylindrical objects suddenly fell out of the skeleton warriors' chests, rolling at his feet. The flashing electric snakes ignited the fuses on the cylinders, emitting a thin wisp of smoke. What is this? Magic scrolls? The Lord of Thunder's face showed doubt. But he didn't have time for more analysis, and he quickly released several more lightning bolts, killing the charging undead soldiers. Just then, a bad feeling suddenly arose in the Lord of Thunder's heart. He looked down and saw that the several cylindrical objects were no longer smoking. Was he being overly suspicious? Boom. Boom, boom. A huge explosion instantly sent the Lord of Thunder's body flying. He hit the stone wall behind him and slowly fell. And in the next second, the Lord of Thunder suddenly stood up again, lightning coiling around his body, his face already close to rage. Damn undead, they dared to injure him. And he knew that these undead were trying to wear him down and kill him. If he continued to fight the other party here, he would only exhaust his mental and physical strength, and eventually be killed here. He no longer wanted to recruit the other party as his believer either. He wanted the other party to pay the price, to know the price of angering a deity. He glanced at the direction of the entrance. You have angered a god. You will receive the punishment you deserve. As soon as his voice fell, the Lord of Thunder's pupils suddenly turned silver gray. His pupils were like two grayish-white beads, and the rolling thunder gradually formed an arcane rune. Outside the door, Fang Hao looked at the dark clouds that suddenly appeared in the sky, and the rolling thunder hidden within them. His heart suddenly sank. This guy was about to unleash a big move. Retreat, let's go down, Fang Hao said immediately. He spread his bat wings, grabbed Black Sword, and flew down the mountain. He had just flown out not far. He heard a voice from the temple, Thunder Purgatory. Boom, boom, boom. Countless thick lightning bolts fell from the dark clouds in the sky, covering the entire mountain. The temple collapsed, and the mountain was shattered. The skeleton warriors in the temple and on the mountainside were instantly turned into ashes under the lightning. Even their armor and weapons melted into molten iron in the lightning. Looking at the scene before him, Fang Hao's heart was pounding. This was much more intense than what Lorana could do. The dark clouds had not yet dispersed, but the lightning had stopped. On the collapsed mountain, the disheveled Lord of Thunder suddenly rushed out. He grabbed towards Fang Hao with lightning speed. "Kid, let's see where you can run." The Thunder Lord's full force strike directly cleared out all the undead soldiers who had charged onto the temple. But at the same time, the Thunder Lord also saw the densely packed undead soldiers down the mountain. He hadn't expected there to be so many people down there. His gaze finally landed on Fang Hao in the midst of the ranks. With a stomp of his foot, his figure shot out. He approached Fang Hao's location at an astonishing speed, knowing that only by killing him could he control the situation at hand. Seeing the opponent rushing towards him, Fang Hao also revealed a hint of panic. The battle just now had consumed at least tens of thousands of soldiers, so even if the opponent had strong physical and mental strength, he should have reached a state of near exhaustion. But this Thunder Lord not only killed all the soldiers on the mountain with one blow. At this moment, he even transformed into a stream of light, rushing towards his direction. Even if he was currently controlling an orange-level demon puppet, it would be difficult to withstand the attack of a quasi-god. Fang Hao tapped his feet, and the huge bat wings instantly spread open. He planned to create distance between himself and the Thunder Lord. But the opponent's speed was too fast, and this attack would probably be difficult to avoid. Bang! Just at the critical moment, the giant wall, holding its shield high, directly collided with the Thunder Lord's side. The inertia of the two caused the Thunder Lord's body to deviate. Fang Hao also took advantage of this opportunity to directly fly into the air, creating distance from the opponent. "Kill," Fang Hao said with a gloomy expression. Swish, swish, swish. Bang, bang, bang. Countless arrows shot towards the Thunder Lord's fallen position. Following the arrows, magic bullets flew. The powerful energy caused the air to distort, and energy fluctuations spread and exploded differently. Boom. The ruins exploded again, and the Thunder Lord's figure reappeared in front of everyone. However, the scales on the Thunder Lord's body were broken, and even his forehead and neck were bleeding slightly. Even a quasi-god has an upper limit of what they can withstand. He had thrown in tens of thousands of people, and the Thunder Lord was injured. "Continue the attack," Fang Hao said again. The undead once again surged towards the Thunder Lord. Without the constraints of the copper door, the undead soldiers could better surround him from all directions. Unafraid, they pounced towards the spreading lightning. Black clouds began to appear above the Thunder Lord's head. This was Nesbit's stripping trait. Although it was impossible to see any effect, Nesbit had also joined the battle. The 10th tier troops, coupled with the modified corpse whites, allowed them to withstand the impact of lightning, causing no small amount of trouble. Bone dragons, skeletal pseudo-dragons, skeletal giant bats, skeletal warriors, skeletal ogres. Centered on the Thunder Lord, they launched a siege. The Thunder Lord's condition was getting worse and worse. His shoulder was struck by Nesbit's axe, and his right arm was tightly bitten by a bone dragon. His entire body was like a blood-soaked man who had been fished out of the water. It seemed that he would not be able to hold on for much longer. At this point, a trace of fear finally appeared in the Thunder Lord's eyes. "You can't kill me," the Thunder Lord roared through gritted teeth. Surrounded by densely packed undead, the Thunder Lord couldn't see Fang Hao, and Fang Hao couldn't see him either. But the Thunder Lord knew that Fang Hao had not left. He was watching the battle from not far away. "Why?" Fang Hao's voice came, but it was difficult to discern his location. "If you dare to kill a god, you will incur the hatred of all the gods. As a mortal body, you will suffer the revenge of the gods," the Thunder Lord shouted loudly. Hearing these words, Fang Hao frowned again. It could now be proven that gods really existed in this world. Whether a mortal killing a god would arouse the jealousy of other gods was indeed hard to say. But on second thought, things had already reached this point. Once the Thunder Lord seized the opportunity, he would not hesitate to kill him. Then there would be no chance for those gods to take action. So, unless a god really came out to save him now, he had to die at his hands. You are a quasi-god, not a real god. Moreover, as the Thunder Lord, you attempted to plunder the believers of the undead god and seize faith. Naturally, I must represent the undead god and eliminate you. Fang Hao thought for a while and said plausibly. You? The Thunder Lord was rendered speechless. At this time, he was already covered by the undead army, and he had failed several times in trying to break free. Seeing that he would eventually be unable to escape death, the Thunder Lord made up his mind and forcibly activated divine magic again. His pupils turned gray-white again. As his body began to wither, dark clouds and lightning appeared in the sky again. Thunder Purgatory. Seeing that the opponent was releasing a killing move again, Fang Hao immediately ordered to speed up the pace of the attack. And the others, including the difficult-to-recruit troops, tried to distance themselves from the battlefield as much as possible. Rumble. Thunder Purgatory enveloped the Thunder Lord's sky. Lightning snakes, like giant pythons, darted out of the dark clouds and exploded on the ground. In an instant, all the undead soldiers in the city and area turned to ashes. The armor left behind by the Temple Guard army was also turned into molten iron under the lightning. After Thunder Purgatory, there was silence on the battlefield. Everyone was wary of the Thunder Lord's next attack. But as the smoke and dust dissipated, they saw the Thunder Lord in the center, kneeling on the ground, his body like a dried corpse drained of blood and flesh. Standing there stiffly. For a long time, there was no reaction. Fang Hao didn't believe he was dead, so he sent 2 skeletons to check. The skeleton soldier walked in front of the Thunder Lord and swung his sword, directly beheading him. Galu rolled aside. Really dead? Fang Hao was a little surprised that the Thunder Lord was really dead. At this time, a gust of wind blew. The corpse also turned to ashes and scattered with the wind. Damn, the body is gone, Fang Hao exclaimed. One of the important reasons why he had to kill the Thunder Lord was the corpse left behind after the quasi-god died. Now, it was gone with a gust of wind. Fang Hao felt a little regretful, but his eyes noticed that there was a gray-white light cluster in the ashes of the corpse. Item dropped. Along the way, the corpses that turned to ashes would drop some special materials. Then this quasi-god must have good things. Fang Hao stepped forward and looked at the items below. This was a light cluster, not in the form of a physical object. More like an energy body. Divinity, level 0. Description: the core of the power of the gods. Powerful divine arts rely on the operation of the divinity. Divinity. Fang Hao muttered, manipulating the puppet to pick up the light ball. It should be a special and rare material. Black Sword and others walked over. Lord, is everything all right? It's okay. Have people clean up the battlefield as soon as possible, search the temple carefully, and bring all the spoils back together, Fang Hao said directly. The temple had been turned into a ruin, and many places had collapsed. But just now in the temple, Fang Hao had seen a lot of good things. Gold and silver utensils, luminous stones, there were many inside. Moreover, in this battle, which had reached this point, no treasure chest had been found. Fang Hao strongly suspected that the location of the treasure chest was in the temple. Therefore, after the war, it was necessary to clean up the ruins and dig out all the useful items. Understood, Lord. I will arrange for people to clean up immediately. Black Sword nodded in response. Having fought to this point, this battle could be considered to be nearing its end. After that, it was the work of excavating the ruins and finding the treasure chest. There was also no need for Fang Hao to accompany them. Furthermore, the route from the fortress to here had already been cleared, and transportation and support were not a problem at all. Black Sword and the others could handle things themselves. All right, I'll leave this place to you for now. If you need anything, notify me in time, Fang Hao said, nodding. Yes, sir. Several commanders responded in unison. After explaining everything, Fang Hao controlled the puppet and flew towards the fortress. He returned to the fortress before dusk, and Fang Hao canceled Divine Advent, directly retrieving the puppet. He took the divinity light orb from the puppet's hand. The moment he touched it, he immediately felt the light orb transform into a powerful energy, breaking through Fang Hao's mental defenses and penetrating into his soul. At the same time, Fang Hao also felt a powerful and peculiar energy circulating within his body. Successfully fused with level 0 divinity. A divine statue can be erected to collect the power of faith to increase the divinity level. Unlock traits: lightning immunity, spirit of thunder, giant physique. Unlocked skills: lightning strike, thunder purgatory. Lightning immunity. Immune to the effects of lightning and thunder elements. Spirit of thunder. Lightning and lightning-related skills have an additional plus 100% skill effect. Giant physique. All attributes plus 100%. Lightning strike. Hurls a bolt of lightning at a distance of up to 500 meters, with a cooldown time of 1.5 seconds. Thunder purgatory. Manipulates the weather, releasing thunder purgatory within a certain range around the user, dealing 300% indiscriminate damage. After absorbing the divinity, Fang Hao directly unlocked several skills of the Lord of Thunder. Especially the final Thunder Purgatory, this skill had annihilated nearly 1,000,000 of his undead soldiers. Whether it was a palace or a mountain, everything was razed to the ground in this Thunder Purgatory. This was enough to demonstrate the power of this skill. Even if he no longer had the protection of an army in the future, and was surrounded by layers of people, he could release Thunder Purgatory and send all the enemies to the afterlife, giving himself more combat power and self-preservation ability. It's just that he had been studying fire magic all along, and had just read a few fire-related books, gaining some of his own understanding, but now he had switched to lightning. Alas, life is unpredictable. After absorbing the divinity, and Jia, Dimitrij, and the others instantly felt a change in Fang Hao. Originally, Fang Hao was just an ordinary person who knew some spells. But now, he gave people a feeling of majesty and power. Did it rain over there? I heard thunder, and Jia said. And Jia didn't pay attention to Fang Hao's change, but was more curious as to why it was thundering on a clear day. No, I met a very powerful person who can release lightning, Fang Hao replied. A lightning mage? There's even a mage in this godforsaken place. And Jia became even more curious. The commotion just now was not small. They could hear dense and loud thunder outside the barren battlefield. Anyone who could unleash such power was obviously not weak. Now that Fang Hao had returned safely, the two who were nervous relaxed. It's a quasi-god, the giant spirit god worshipped by those giant trolls, Fang Hao continued to explain. Oh, a god, that's so powerful. And Jia finally showed a surprised expression. SOSO, we killed him. Fang Hao waved his hand, acting as if it was nothing. The battle to kill the Lord of Thunder was actually not easy. Without matching hero units, they completely relied on the undead soldiers to grind the opponent to death. Similarly, Fang Hao's side also paid a heavy price. At least 1,000,000 soldiers died in this battle. It was the biggest loss Fang Hao had suffered in battle in history. Fortunately, the harvest was equally huge, not to mention the treasure chests that were still being searched for and the spoils in the temple. The divinity alone was Fang Hao's greatest gain. Divinity gave Fang Hao himself a new development path. In fact, he didn't really want to accept the undead transformation ceremony. If he could rely on divinity to obtain powerful power and long life, it would actually be better. Is there anything good in the quasi-god's residence? I didn't see you bring anything back. And Jia didn't forget about the spoils. The temple collapsed, and the spoils were also buried inside. I asked Black Sword to clean it up. Then what are we going to do next? And Jia continued to ask. Let's go back. We're not needed here anymore. Just leave it to Black Sword and the others. Oh, you've killed a quasi-god. Do you want to celebrate tonight and eat something good? And Jia suggested again. Wasn't last night good enough? Better. Fang Hao walked out of the commander's hall. He saw Dong Jieyue and the others looking in the direction of the barren battlefield, discussing in low voices. Fang Hao was also curious about what everyone was discussing. When he got closer, he discovered the changes that had taken place in the barren battlefield. The dense and lingering aura of corruption began to gradually dissipate. Not only was the line of sight into the depths clear, but the dark red color in the soil also faded a lot under the sunlight. With the death of the quasi-god in the temple, the entire land seemed to have come out of a curse. It was only a matter of time before it returned to its normal state. Jiayue, Fang Hao called out softly. Brother Hao. Dong Jiayue had been in charge of logistics and had not entered the battlefield. Now that the battle was over, Fang Hao would also leave here, and he would need to handle the follow-up matters. The battle is over. I'll make some tools, and you arrange for someone to send them to Black Sword and the others, Fang Hao said. Oh, okay. Fang Hao directly opened the Lord's book and began to make various tools. Hundredfold amplification triggered, obtained 101,000 dwarf pickaxes. Hundredfold amplification triggered, obtained 101,000 iron shovels. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Crackling sounds. Various tools appeared from the air. Dong Jiayue began to organize people to load the tools into the vehicle. Digging up the temple on the mountain was not a simple matter, and all kinds of tools were needed. Okay, give these to Black Sword and the others to use first. When you need to replenish any tools, you can make them directly. Fang Hao continued to instruct. Understood, Brother Hao, don't worry, Dong Jiayue readily agreed. Well, I'll leave this place to you. After Fang Hao finished speaking, he released the demon teleportation again and returned to the territory. Everything in the territory was as usual. The maids were working normally, without any changes. After dinner, Jia began to tell Luo Li and the other maids about her experience in the barren battlefield this time. Among them, the army's decisive battle against the quasi-god was also thrilling. The maids exclaimed from time to time. Inside the Lord's hall, Fang Hao stood in the middle of the hall, with the stone sculptor Gray sitting beside him. In Gray's hand, he held a clay sculpture. The shape and image of the clay sculpture were the same as Fang Hao in the middle of the hall. Sir, it's done. Are you satisfied with the shape? After absorbing the divinity, Fang Hao directly unlocked several skills of the Lord of Thunder. Especially the final Thunder Purgatory, the power of this move directly wiped out hundreds of thousands of his undead soldiers. Whether it was a palace or a mountain, under this thunder, they all turned into ruins. It was also the most powerful skill Fang Hao had ever seen since coming to this world. Now that he had absorbed the divinity and learned this skill, it greatly increased his combat power. Even if he faced some enemies alone in the future, he would have strong self-preservation capabilities. It's just that the fire magic he had been studying before, he had just read a few fire magic books and had some understanding of his own, and now it has changed to lightning. Alas, life is unpredictable. After absorbing the divinity, Jia, Dimitega, and the others instantly felt a change in Fang Hao. Originally, Fang Hao was just an ordinary person who knew some magic. At this moment, he gave off a feeling of majesty and power. Is it raining inside the battlefield? I heard thunder. Jia didn't focus on Fang Hao's changes, but was more curious why there was thunder on a clear day ahead. No, I met a very powerful person who can release lightning, Fang Hao replied. A lightning mage? There are mages in this godforsaken place. Jia became even more curious. The commotion just now was not small. Outside the barren battlefield, they could hear the dense, huge thunder. Someone who could unleash such power was clearly not weak. At the same time, they were a little worried about the battle ahead. Fortunately, Fang Hao was back, and the battle was over. It was a demigod, the giant spirit god that those trolls worshipped. Fang Hao continued to explain from the side. Oh, a god that powerful. Jia finally showed a surprised expression. Just SOSO, we killed him. Fang Hao waved his hand, looking like it was no big deal. The battle to kill the Lord of Thunder was actually not easy. Without matching hero units, they completely relied on the undead soldiers to wear down the opponent. Similarly, Fang Hao's side also paid a heavy price. At least hundreds of thousands, or even close to 1,000,000, undead soldiers died in this battle. It was the biggest loss Fang Hao had ever suffered in a battle. Fortunately, the harvest was also huge, not to mention the treasure chests they were still searching for, and the spoils of war in the temple. The divinity alone was enough to compensate for the losses of this battle. The divinity gave Fang Hao a new development path for himself. Actually, He didn't really want to accept the undead transformation ritual. If he could gain powerful strength and long life by relying on divinity, Fang Hao would actually find it more acceptable. That's the demigod's residence. Are there any good things? I didn't see you bring anything back. And Jia didn't forget about the spoils of war. The temple collapsed, and the spoils of war are buried inside. I'm having He Jian clear it out. What do we do next? And Jia continued to ask. Let's go back. We're not needed here anymore. We can leave it to He Jian and the others. Oh, you even killed a demigod. Do you want to celebrate tonight and eat something good? And Jia suggested again. Wasn't last night good enough? Even better. Fang Hao walked out of the commander's hall. He saw Dong Jieyue and others looking in the direction of the barren battlefield, discussing in low voices. Fang Hao was also curious about what everyone was discussing. Walking closer, he discovered the changes that had occurred in the barren battlefield. The thick, lingering, corrupting aura began to gradually dissipate. Not only was the view towards the depths clear, but the dark red color in the soil also faded significantly under the sunlight. With the death of the demigod in the temple, the entire land seemed to have been freed from a curse. It was gradually returning to normal. Perhaps, in a few years, the land here will become normal. Jieyue, Fang Hao called softly. Brother Hao. Dong Jieyue had been responsible for logistics and had not entered the battlefield. Now that the battle was over, Fang Hao would also leave here, and the subsequent matters still needed her to handle. The battle is over. I'll make some tools. You arrange for people to send them to He Jian and the others, Fang Hao instructed. Oh, okay. Fang Hao directly opened the Lord's book and began to craft various tools. Hundredfold increase triggered. Obtain dwarf mining pick 101000. Hundredfold increase triggered. Obtained iron shovel 101000. Hundredfold increase triggered. Clatter, clatter, various tools appeared from the air. Dong Jieyue began to organize people to load the tools onto carts. Excavating the temple on the mountain was not a simple task. All kinds of tools were needed. Okay, give these to He Jian and the others to use first. When you need to replenish any tools, you can just craft them directly. Fang Hao continued. Understood, Brother Hao, don't worry. Dong Jieyue readily agreed. Okay, I'll leave this place to you. After speaking, Fang Hao released demonic teleportation again and returned to the territory. Everything was as usual within the territory. The maids worked normally, without any changes. After dinner, and Jia began to tell Lolly and the other maids about her experiences in the barren battlefield this time. Among them, the plot of the army's decisive battle against the demigod was even more thrilling. The maids would occasionally let out gasps of surprise. Inside the Lord's hall, Fang Hao stood in the middle of the hall, with the stonemason Gu Lei sitting beside him. In Gu Lei's hand, he held a clay sculpture. The shape and image of the clay sculpture were exactly the same as Fang Hao in the middle of the hall. Sir, it's ready. Do you like the shape? The clay sculpture in Gu Lei's hand was called a model. It was a small sample made before creating a large clay sculpture. If there were any unsatisfactory parts, they would be modified through the model, and only after everything was finalized would the final product be made. Hearing Gu Lei say he was finished, Fang Hao walked over. Seeing the clay sculpture, he nodded with satisfaction. Not bad. Make it according to this. Fang Hao directly finalized the plan. Okay, sir. We need to prepare the materials tonight, and we can officially start tomorrow, Gu Lei said. Okay, you arrange it. The statue will be placed in the temple. Be careful not to bump into the other divine statues during transportation, Fang Hao instructed again. Inside the temple, a total of 4 divine statues were worshipped. Since witnessing the power of the demigod, Fang Hao no longer dared to treat gods lightly. Although he suspected that gods couldn't directly interfere with mortal affairs, it was better to be safe than sorry. It was better to be cautious in all matters. Currently, the territory still relied on them to provide attributes, and offending them would do him no good. As for setting up a statue of the king, Fang Hao was not worried about this point. Since the building had this ability, it was also following the rules of this world. It shouldn't be considered offending those gods. Yes, sir. Gu Lei responded and left the hall with the clay model. After seeing Gu Lei off, Fang Hao took a hot spring bath and returned to his room to rest. At the same time, in a basement in Lizi's city, dim nightstone chandeliers swayed gently from the ceiling, lengthening the shadows of the people. In front of the round table stood several figures in black robes. They were the faceless ones of Lizi's city. One of them spoke. "Speak. What is the matter that you called us here this time? I don't want to be caught by that woman from the city lord's mansion." The person's tone was very unfriendly, and it could be heard that they had great resistance to this meeting. The others did not speak, seemingly agreeing with the speaker's words. The faceless ones of Lizi's city had become like rats crossing the street. Everyone was cautious, living in the city with their tails between their legs. The reason for this situation was the continuous search and suppression of the faceless ones by Lady Rebecca in the city lord's mansion. No one knew if they would be the next person to have their homes searched and thrown into prison, so they acted more cautiously. The leading faceless one did not offer any rebuttal or explanation because of the other person's words. Instead, he said directly, "This time, I would like to introduce the new chief steward, Lord Adeline." As soon as the words fell, crisp footsteps echoed in the basement corridor. Immediately after, a beautiful and slender woman, twisting her waist, walked out from the dim shadows. She silently stood in front of the round table. The other faceless ones were slightly taken aback when they saw the woman who walked out. Because this woman did not wear a black robe and hood, but only wore a gold-threaded veil over her face. The woman was very beautiful. A head of golden curly hair fell across her chest. A high-slit dress revealed her fair and rounded thighs, and the hip area was tightened, hugging her rounded hips. This kind of clothing was only sold at the Bone Fabric Shop in Lizi's city. The woman held a crystal ball in her hand and placed it on the table. A fortune teller? This kind of swindler was common in taverns. "This is Lord Adeline, who has just arrived. She will also be assigning our tasks from now on," the leading black-robed man introduced again. The chief steward of the faceless ones represented an important identity and status within the faceless ones. Upon arriving in any city, they would directly gain control of that city. Lord Adeline. Everyone recovered from the woman's beauty and immediately bowed. Adeline showed a charming smile. "Well, I came this time to help everyone escape their predicament, and at the same time, to use this opportunity to gain control of Lizi's city." The group of faceless ones looked at each other. Those who understood the situation in this city, regarding gaining control of Lizi's city, their first feeling was that it was impossible. Lord Adeline, that lady in the city lord's mansion, also has strong abilities. It will not be easy to seize power, one of the faceless ones reminded in a low voice. Adeline smiled. "As long as the person you mentioned is dead, power will naturally fall into our hands. At that time, the distribution of resources in this city will also be rewritten, and everyone's wealth will reach an unprecedented height." Kill Rebecca? This sentence could only be said by someone who didn't understand the situation in this city. Rebecca holds the center of power in the city and the command of the army. She's not someone you can just kill whenever you want. If it were that easy to kill her, Rebecca wouldn't have survived until now. Lord Adeline, this is... Just as a faceless was about to speak, Adeline interrupted him again. "I know what you want to say, but I am also prepared," Adeline said, looking at the faceless beside her. "Lord Aubrey, if Rebecca dies, can you stabilize the political power?" The faceless beside her didn't hesitate and took off his hood, revealing a familiar face. It was indeed the Lord of Lysis City, Aubrey. Aubrey immediately replied, "There is no problem with that. According to the Federal Council's decree, if Rebecca is missing or dead, I can directly take over the position of City Lord. Only the military aspect needs Lord Adeline's proper arrangements." Aubrey spoke calmly, but the other faceless below him, their eyes widened. No one expected that the city's biggest freeloader was right beside them. Moreover, he had been waiting for the opportunity to replace Rebecca all along. Adeline was very satisfied with everyone's reaction. This was the scene she wanted to see. She spoke to everyone below. "I naturally have arrangements for the military as well. This time, everyone just follow my plan." "Lord Adeline, what do we need to do?" someone else asked. They were faceless, and they had no choice. Adeline continued, Before that, I need information on one person, as detailed as possible. Please tell us, Lord. If you talk about dealing with Rebecca, we may not have the ability, but when it comes to intelligence, no one in this city can escape our eyes and ears. Adeline smiled slightly and said calmly, the transmigrator, Fang Hao. I want all his information. That cloth merchant? He's just an ordinary person. Adeline shook her head. He's ordinary? The first transmigrator. He's not as simple as you see. She had met Fang Hao once at the Merchant Alliance's station base. At that time, because it was within the Merchant Alliance's territory, it wasn't good to be too excessive. But she didn't expect Fang Hao to appear in Lysis City. Okay, we will return immediately, compile the intelligence, and hand it over to you, the Faceless replied. All right, increase the interrogation of the transmigrators. I want to know the exact location of Fang Hao's territory. Yes, Lord Adeline. The next day, Fang Hao woke up in the morning and received a message from Weaver, Domina. The orcs near the Weaver camp and the Mithril mine had already retreated the day before yesterday. According to Domina's inquiries, the Blackrock orc tribe had indeed suffered a dragon attack, and the matter was very serious. The entire village was almost razed to the ground. Now, people from Tasco Orc City have stepped in to mediate the situation, and the final outcome is still uncertain. But their goal has been achieved. For the time being, the orcs from the Blackrock tribe have not gone to harass the mine production again. The development of the entire incident was similar to what Fang Hao had expected. The owner of that treasure cave had indeed taken action against the Blackrock tribe in anger. Once a war begins, it is very difficult to mediate, even if it is eventually proven that the Blackrock tribe was framed and is innocent. However, will the Blackrock tribe not pursue this matter? They can't find the culprit, and their side has lost so many people. The Blackrock tribe will not let this matter end easily. No matter how powerful the dragon is, the territory is ultimately the orcs' domain. After that, it's up to the two sides to fight it out, as long as they don't investigate and find him. After listening to Domina's report, Fang Hao put away the voice transmission conch. After getting dressed and washing up simply, he walked directly out of the room. Eeyore was preparing breakfast on the first floor, and the other maids had also gotten up early to start preparing for their work. After a simple morning exercise and breakfast, a bone dragon landed in front of the Lord's manor. After two orcs dismounted from the dragon's back, they carried down a dark gold treasure chest. Lord, this is the treasure chest from Commander Blacksword. The rest of the spoils are still being extracted, one orc said. All right, you've worked hard. Did you encounter any dangers after I left? Fang Hao continued to ask. No, Lord. After destroying the temple, those corrupted corpses did not continue to appear in other areas. Everything is normal, and the extraction work is also very smooth, the orc replied. The corrupted corpses the orc was referring to were those corrupted monsters. After that quasi-god died, the entire area returned to normal. The corrupted monsters also disappeared with it. Okay, I understand. Fang Hao nodded, indicating that he understood. The maids brought 2 cups of fruit wine. After resting for a while, the two of them got back on the bone dragon and returned to the barren battlefield. After the 2 orcs left, Fang Hao's attention returned to the dark gold treasure chest. The difficulty of this battle was very high. Not only did they encounter tens of thousands of corrupted monsters along the way, the strength of that Lord of Thunder far exceeded Fang Hao's understanding of individual combat power. One person releasing one skill was enough to raise a city to the ground. This kind of power was truly terrifying. Fortunately, the harvest was equally huge. A dark gold treasure chest. Open it directly. Obtained. Temple Guard's shoulder pad crafting blueprint, purple. Temple Guard's boots crafting blueprint, purple. Temple Guard's breastplate crafting blueprint, purple. Temple Guard's helmet crafting blueprint, purple. Thunderblade shield crafting blueprint, purple. Thunderblade cloak crafting blueprint, purple. Thunderblade halberd crafting blueprint, purple. Thunderhawk blade, dark gold. Hero's Heart 15. Hero's Credential 10. Shadowstone 172. Traces of Divinity 55. Warfire Coin 1750. A dazzling array of lights appeared before Fang Hao's eyes. Fang Hao's gaze immediately caught the dark gold equipment. Thunderhawk Blade, Dark Gold. Category, Greatsword. Damage, Tier 7 damage. Abilities, Sky Power, Anti-Air. Sky Power, Air Magic Effect plus 100%, Consumption minus 50%. Anti-Air, minimum 2 seconds, maximum 15 seconds, causes enemy flying units to lose the ability to fly. Description: Thunder is the wrath of the Sky Father, and the thunderclap is the messenger of transcendence. The Thunderhawk Blade was a very ornate greatsword. The hilt was carved with intricate patterns, and the blade had patterns resembling feathers and lightning. The greatsword looked massive, but when Fang Hao held it, it didn't feel as heavy as he imagined. In fact, it felt similar in weight to the starlight staff he usually used. The Thunderhawk Blade's damage reached Tier 7. The damage of purple weapons was only Tier 4, so Tier 7 could be considered a divine weapon. Moreover, the attributes of this sword were compatible with the lightning ability he had just acquired. It could just replace the starlight staff. Holding the great sword, he swung it a few times in the air with one hand. After testing the feel, he directly put it into his storage space. After checking the dark gold weapon, he continued to look at the other reward blueprints. Temple Guard's shoulder pad, wrought iron block 8, fine iron 5, thick tough leather 10, thread 12, metal parts 10, mithril 3. Temple Guard's boots, wrought iron block 6, fine iron 4, thick tough leather 8, thread 15, metal parts 12, mithril 2. Temple Guard's breastplate, wrought iron block 12, fine iron 8, thick tough leather 15, thread 22, metal parts 18, mithril 4. Temple Guard's helmet, wrought iron block 8, fine iron 6, thick tough leather 12, thread 10, metal parts 15, mithril 5. The Temple Guard set was the equipment worn by the noble guards under the temple at that time. Although countless years had passed, these guard sets were still relatively well-preserved and showed strong defensive capabilities in battle. The quality of the equipment was already considered top-tier among military gear. The most elite armies of the major regional forces only had blue sets as standard equipment. Only a few commanders and heroes would be equipped with 1 or 2 pieces of purple armor or weapons. If Fang Hao's army could be equipped with his troop types and batches, they would already exceed the equipment standard of most forces' troops. Now the only thing missing is materials. The pressure will now be on the newly relocated dwarves. It remains to be seen if they can process the required materials. The last 3 blueprints were for a shield, a cloak, and a halberd. Thunderblade shield, wrought iron block 10, fine iron 5, thick tough leather 8, metal parts 12, mithril 2. Thunderblade cloak, linen cloth 5, silk 2, thread 22, leather 5, metal parts 8, mithril 3. Thunderblade halberd, hard tough wood 1, fine iron 12, thick tough leather 2, metal parts 10, mithril 5. The 3 blueprints with Thunderblade in their names were also purple blueprints. However, the weapons were limited to spearmen and cavalry. This limited their use in terms of equipment. Even so, when the vast army of undead is all equipped with indestructible purple armor and purple weapons, their combat strength will be incredibly powerful. Ordinary undead warriors will no longer be weak and vulnerable. Each one will have the ability to contend with high-tier troops. Unless a quasi-god appears again, it will be very difficult for any force to resist his skeletal army. The subsequent rewards also included Hero's Heart and Hero's Credential. Hero's Heart is used to promote troops to heroes, and the credential is for heroes to take cross-dire exams. Go, call Nie and the others. Not long after, a few Nispits, led by Nie, walked over. Within the territory, there were a total of 50 Nispits left behind, while the remaining Nispits were deployed in the Bloody Mountain Range, the Cold Wind Mountain Range, and the Barren Battlefield Fortress, these 3 areas. My lord, please give your command. The Nispits saluted Fang Hao. Fang Hao nodded, handed the 18 hearts of heroes to Nie, and said, "Here are 18 hearts of heroes. You all prepare yourselves over the next 2 days, and then undergo the hero trial. The rest of you wait a bit. There will be more hearts of heroes later for you to undergo the trial." "Thank you, my lord." Nie took them and expressed his gratitude. Nispits, among the undead soldier types, are those that possess independent thought. They can undergo hero assessment. But as NIE said, because they themselves contain characteristics of being modified, the assessment for promotion to hero will be more difficult than for ordinary races, and the success rate will also be lower. Once the first attempt fails, the required promotion materials will increase exponentially. By the third or fourth attempt, they will be unable to pass again. Ordinary factions will then cancel the provision of resources for this hero, as the materials consumed are already several times the norm. With this money and these resources, several identical heroes could be cultivated. All right, you all go down and prepare. Just proceed with the assessment yourselves when the time comes, Fang Hao said calmly. Among the emotions of the undead, there is no nervousness or joy. So Fang Hao didn't say anything about relaxing their minds or not being too nervous. They weren't nervous at all. Yes, my lord. The group of Nisbets bowed again and retreated. Fang Hao still valued the Nisbets quite a bit. Whether there could be an army formed by heroes within the territory depended on how these Nisbets performed. He felt a little anticipation in his heart. As for the hero advancement material hero voucher, there wasn't a suitable candidate yet. Except for the crafted skeleton heroes, who cannot use hero vouchers. The other heroes can all use them. But so far, no one has reached the 10th tier. Those who have reached the 7th tier are Leash, Nielsen, and Fate Weaver, Domina. The 8th tier heroes are Ancient Blade, Dimika, and Clip, Kenji. The most promising, however, was Anya, who had already reached the blue 9th tier and seemed hopeful of becoming a 10th tier hero. But Anya wasn't in a hurry about this, looking like she just wanted to eat and be lazy. Fang Hao could only wait and see who reached the 10th tier before providing the materials, to let them attempt to advance. After lunch, Fang Hao took Anya and Dimika with him. Releasing Demon Teleport took him directly to Jinbei City in the Bloody Mountain Range. The sudden appearance of a teleportation light path in the city center still caused quite a stir. When the three walked out from the light screen, they happened to see the female ogre Strala, leading numerous ogre guards rushing towards them. When she saw it was Fang Hao and the others, her expression instantly became solemn. She hurried forward, knelt down, and said, "My lord." Strala had signed a slave contract with Fang Hao, and as the leader of the ogres, she managed their daily life and task assignments. But Strala did not forget her identity as a slave, always showing extremely deferential etiquette when seeing Fang Hao. Seeing Strala bow, the ogre guards nearby also knelt down one after another. One after another, the ogres on the entire street knelt down, shouting, "My lord." "All right, Strala, you may rise, and let everyone else rise as well," Fang Hao said. "Yes, my lord." Strala stood up and instructed the guards behind her to have everyone stand up. But she herself still kept her head bowed, showing extreme respect. Fang Hao strode towards the city lord's mansion, casually saying, "In the future, you don't need to perform such a grand salute." "Yes, my lord," Strala replied obediently. "Have any dwarves arrived?" Fang Hao continued to ask. "Yes, my lord. A team of 1,000 entered the city last night, and I have already arranged accommodation for them," Strala said. "Good. Send someone to inform the dwarf leader to come see me." "Yes, my lord." Strala immediately gave the order, and some ogres headed towards the area where the dwarves were residing. Inside the city lord's hall, Fang Hao listened to Strala's report and gained some understanding of the recent situation in Jinbei City. Overall, as Caius's former woman, Strala also demonstrated good leadership abilities. Not only did she stabilize the emotions of the ogres, several key mines have also resumed production. The only thing lacking now is that Fang Hao killed too many ogres, resulting in many mine tunnels currently lacking manpower for excavation. Strala spoke more subtly, also fearing that Fang Hao would blame her without question. Fang Hao naturally understood the problem and didn't say much either. Not long after, the dwarf leader Belagar, accompanied by a few dwarves, strode in. Striding with his head held high, he indeed possessed some of the aura of a royal descendant. When they saw Fang Hao sitting at the top, Belagar and the others were momentarily stunned. Wasn't Fang Hao in the barren battlefield? How did he appear here again? You should know that yesterday they had traveled for a whole day and arrived at Jinbei City late at night. If it weren't for Fang Hao's people guiding them, the city gates wouldn't even have been opened for them. Now, it turned out, in the morning, they saw Fang Hao sitting there. "My lord." Belagar led the way in saluting, and the other dwarves also followed suit. Push the sand table over," Fang Hao said directly without wasting words. The huge sand table of the Bloody Mountain Range was pushed over. On the sand table, the mountain range's contours and the locations of the former ogre tribes could be clearly seen. Fang Hao walked down from the platform and stood in front of the sand table. "Belagar, the scale of these cities is quite good. You can consider them," Fang Hao said, standing to the side. The cities before them were cities left behind by the ogre tribes. Although the ogres were dead, the buildings within the city, including the city walls, clan leaders' hall, and some residential buildings, were preserved. Choosing an existing city is more convenient than rebuilding. "What about this one? What do you think, my lord?" Belagar stood on his toes and pointed to the city behind Jinbei City. This city is located on the north side of Jinbei City, in the middle of 3 huge mountains. It was also the city of the Rockhead tribe. As the second largest tribe among the ogres, the city of the Rockhead tribe had already reached level 5, with a complete range of buildings. Although it had been trampled over by the Undead army. But repairing it would also be simpler and save materials compared to rebuilding. Of course, this was Fang Hao's idea. Belagar's reason for choosing this city was the ore veins in the nearby mountains. Based on their dwarf understanding of mountains and the distribution of these mines, there should be a large ore vein within the mountain. Since they chose to settle in the Bloody Mountain Range, they would inevitably have contact with the ogres in the future. He had to claim this ore vein first. "All right, prepare yourselves, and let's depart now. I will also accompany you and help you construct some buildings," Fang Hao agreed directly. "All right, my lord. I will arrange it immediately." After Belagar finished speaking, he left with his people. After returning, he would lead his clansmen to the chosen city. In the afternoon, Fang Hao and Belagar arrived at the former Rockhead tribe city. The city had suffered the ravages of war. Many houses had collapsed, and the city gates were already in disrepair. The only clean thing was that there wasn't a single corpse within the city. The bodies from where the undead had passed were all thrown into the conversion pool. Fang Hao re-established this place as a subsidiary city and named it Bagang City. This name was chosen by Belagar, likely the name of the mountain where they previously lived. Fang Hao also agreed, as it was where the dwarves would live. Choosing a name they liked would also give them a sense of belonging. After appointing Belagar as the governor, Fang Hao also used the Lord's Book to repair several special buildings for them. In less than an hour, the entire city had reached a scale capable of normal habitation. Fang Hao thought his abilities would surprise Belagar, who had been by his side. But unexpectedly, Belagar remained very calm. Upon asking, he realized the dwarves had also started interacting with the transmigrators, and many weapons and equipment had been greatly improved based on the transmigrators' suggestions. For example, the method of loading gunpowder into the barrel of a musket and then inserting a bullet was critiqued by the transmigrators. They proposed improvements to the musket's body and bullets, making it closer to the effect of modern firearms. This point has already gained the attention of the dwarf tribe, but it is currently still in the design and testing phase. However, with the design and improvement direction, success is not far off. Hearing Belagar say these things, Fang Hao was instead surprised. If modern weapons were designed, it would be very likely to change the situation of this era. Farmers equipped with firearms could fully display strength no less than regular soldiers. Even a dragon would probably find it hard to withstand a burst of gunfire. It seems this matter also needs to be taken seriously. After all the buildings were constructed, Fang Hao continued to ask, "Belagar, where do you think the mountain belly great furnace should be built? I'll build it for you as soon as possible." "My lord, the mountain belly great furnace needs to be built based on the mountain itself. I have already chosen the location. Please follow me, my lord," Belagar said. Fang Hao followed him to the foot of a towering mountain. This was one of the 3 mountains surrounding the city, and it was the largest among them. "My lord, let's build it here," Belagar said directly. The mountain belly great furnace is the fundamental means by which dwarves can refine ores. The construction of each great furnace requires the combined efforts of several generations to complete. The blueprints are also only in the hands of a few individuals like the dwarf leader. The ability of the transmigrators played an important role at this point. It didn't require several generations to build. It could be built as long as the materials were complete. Mountain Belly Great Furnace. Wood 15750, stone 125, 8850, hardwood 27580, fine masonry bricks 185470, thick tough leather 5435, iron 15820, cast iron blocks 8575, metal parts 1255, precision parts 420, red flame essence 22, perfect essence 10. Description: legend has it that the dwarves used a volcano to build a massive furnace. The flames within the furnace never extinguished, making the dwarf craftsmanship famous throughout the world. Holy cow! Seeing the required materials, Fang Hao was completely numb. The materials consumed by this mountain belly great furnace were simply terrifying. This was enough to build a city directly, especially the stone, which actually reached 1.2 million. The remaining materials were also consumed in large quantities, especially precision parts. Fang Hao did not have the blueprint for precision parts yet. All the parts in the warehouse were obtained by killing various constructs. He had accumulated them little by little, planning to use them on constructs later. Building the mountain belly great furnace now was just barely enough. But since things had come to this, he couldn't be stingy with the materials anymore. Saying it couldn't be built now would surely make these dwarves think he was unreliable. After determining the location, he began construction directly. Instantly, an orange light enveloped the mountain before them, gradually forming the outline of the great furnace. However, the construction time had already exceeded 3 hours, and he still needed to wait a while longer. While waiting for the construction time, Fang Hao also crafted enough living utensils for the dwarves: beds, chairs, and various tools. Whatever he could think of, Fang Hao tried his best to craft for them. 3 hours passed quickly. The massive furnace crafted from the mountain appeared before everyone. Ironbeard, Belagar's loyalty to you increased by 15 points, current loyalty 80. Belagar looked at the great furnace, a hint of excitement and emotion flashing in his eyes. The great furnace that several generations of talent from 8 Peaks Mountain had built. He and his followers also possessed one, and it was new. Only they had it. Mountain Belly Great Furnace. Category: Building. Workers housed 0/450. Raw materials: iron ore. Finished products: cast iron blocks, white steel ingots, dwarf iron ingots, fine iron ingots, 100 refined iron, 100 refined iron ingots, mithril ingots. Description: legend has it that the dwarves used a volcano to build a massive furnace. The flames within the furnace never extinguished, making the dwarf craftsmanship famous throughout the world. Holy cow! The mountain belly great furnace indeed did not disappoint Fang Hao. It could forge various types of iron ingots he knew and didn't know. Besides fine iron, there were several other types of finished products listed later. Not only did it satisfy the material needs for the newly acquired Temple Guard set, but he also didn't have to worry about the materials for higher-level blueprints in the future. Thank you, my lord. With the furnace, we can continue our work, Belagar continued. Once everyone is settled, start resuming production. I will also have the ore mined by the surrounding cities transported here for you to process. Understood, my lord. Belagar nodded to indicate understanding. After helping the dwarves establish their city, Fang Hao did not linger. After releasing Demon Teleport, he returned directly to his territory. After that, Fang Hao rested in his territory for 3 days. From the barren battlefield, the unearthed spoils of war were continuously transported back. Various gold and silver artifacts. The quantity was simply astonishing. The tributes accumulated by the Lord of Thunder were now all beneficial to Fang Hao. My lord, the king's statue is completed. At this, the stonemason Gray walked over quickly. Let's go take a look. Fang Hao led Anya and Eeyore towards the direction of the temple. In front of the temple, a statue stood, carved from stone. It was the image of Fang Hao. Standing there with his head held high, it was very majestic. The king's statue can be erected in the Pantheon. Erecting the king's statue in each subsidiary territory can collect the power of faith and increase the divine rank. Suddenly, two system prompts appeared, interrupting Fang Hao's self-admiration. The king's statue can be placed in the pantheon. Setting up king's statues in various subordinate territories can collect faith power and increase godhead level. The pantheon can be understood as an oversized temple. Ordinary temples can only house two statues, but there is no quantity limit in the pantheon. As long as the statues don't repel each other, they can be placed in the pantheon. Its inclusivity is particularly strong. Similarly, the king's statue can also be placed inside. Fang Hao also happened to obtain a godhead, which allows him to increase its level by collecting the faith of his subjects and gathering faith power. He had seen the godhead was level 0 before. He was still thinking about how to upgrade it. It turns out the godhead level is raised by collecting faith. Thus, the faith of the subjects within the territory and the population size became very important. Fang Hao directly opened the pantheon option and placed the king's statue inside. The next second, the king's statue on the empty ground instantly disappeared. It appeared directly in the main hall of the pantheon. Blueprint unlocked. King's statue. King's statue, wood 320, fine stone brick 350, iron 120, metal parts 50, mithril 5, traces of prayer 1. Description: a great leader, worshipped by his subjects. Unlocking the blueprint directly made things even more convenient. He could share the king's statue blueprint later, and each subordinate city could set up a king's statue. This would allow him to gain faith power and enhance his godhead's abilities. Of course, setting up his own statue felt a bit awkward. But there was no other way. It was for upgrading. Ever since witnessing the power of a quasi-god. It also reminded him that to survive, he had to continue improving his strength. Relying solely on the low-level undead sea tactics against quasi-god level enemies could no longer ensure his undefeated advantage. One skill could clear out swathes of soldiers. This startled Fang Hao, and at the same time, after obtaining the godhead, he felt a sense of longing. Therefore, this king's statue must be set up in the subordinate cities. And he needed more subjects. There was also the collection of faith power. Cities with large populations were all native cities. And these native cities were all conquered by Fang Hao using force, and then governors were appointed. So his own presence was not very high, let alone faith. The next step is also to consider increasing the affection of the subjects in each city towards himself. After thinking it through, he shared the temple blueprint and the king's statue blueprint with several crossing, transmigrator, governors. He also instructed them to build temples in their cities and set up king statues. As soon as the message was sent out, a heated discussion began in the territory channel. They were surprised that Fang Hao had become a king, and also showered him with flattery, saying his statue was mighty and imposing. And Fang Hao wasn't idle either, using the teleportation to visit the native subordinate cities. He built temples in each city and also set up king statues. And he instructed the governors in each place to extensively promote himself as the king. Now is not the time to be low-key. Only when the subjects know your power and believe you will bring them what they want will you gain faith power. After a busy day, Fang Hao returned to the territory. He had visited all the subordinate cities today, and the governors of each city were in their own cities, except for Lorana, who wasn't in Bloodkeep. Bloodhunter said that Lorana had stayed at Bloodkeep for 2 days some time ago, and then left. It seemed she should have returned to Lysis City. After returning to the territory, he soaked in the hot spring in the evening and then fell asleep. The next day, after breakfast, Fang Hao activated the teleportation light curtain and directly arrived at Grizzly Bear's stronghold. Grizzly Bear had been transferred by Fang Hao to the territory formerly belonging to Qiuzhishang, and the current stronghold was managed by the rabbit girl Millie. Millie was a rabbit maid Fang Hao bought from slave traders, and after taking a stamina potion, she showed strong combat talent. Fang Hao arranged for her to be by Grizzly Bear's side to experience real combat. Millie indeed did not disappoint Fang Hao. Her level increased rapidly. When Fang Hao transferred Grizzly Bear away, Millie's level had already reached the 7th tier, making her one of the few masters among the stronghold bandits. Coupled with Fang Hao's relationship with Millie, she naturally became the new leader of the stronghold. When Fang Hao and his group emerged from the teleportation light curtain, they saw Millie, with her hands on her hips, loudly scolding her lazy subordinates who weren't working. That imposing manner, compared to her height of 1.50 m and her lowly-like appearance with large breasts, formed a stark contrast. When she saw Fang Hao walk out, Millie's imposing manner instantly subsided, and she ran over, throwing herself into Fang Hao's arms, whining, "Master, Millie missed you so much." Beside them, some newly joined bandits were dumbfounded. Boss Millie, who had no good temper all day, could actually act spoiled. Feeling the soft body in his arms, Fang Hao rubbed Millie's little head. "I just saw you looking quite like a big sister." "Not at all. You know these guys are bullies who pick on the weak. How can I not be strict?" Millie immediately explained. Everyone in the stronghold, without exception, came from a bandit background. The more assertive you are with these people, the more obedient they become. Grizzly Bear managed them this way too. Otherwise, not just anyone could manage these people. "Okay, it's fine. I think you're doing very well. Choose some people, and they'll go with me to Lysis City later," Fang Hao continued. "Okay, master." Millie nodded. But her arms were still tightly wrapped around Fang Hao, with no intention of letting go. "Hurry up, we're leaving soon." Only at Fang Hao's urging did Millie let go and start gathering people. Soon, Millie gathered 20 people, and they mounted horses and headed towards Lysis City. The reason Fang Hao didn't use teleportation but rode the purple scale horse to Lysis City. He had his own considerations for doing so. Lysis City was not his own city, and secondly, when teleporting, more often than not, he would be teleported to the city center or the city lord's mansion. Fang Hao wasn't sure if he could teleport directly into the mansion he had purchased. So, he decided to teleport to Grizzly Bear's stronghold and then ride the rest of the way, which would also provide proof of entry into the city. Otherwise, it would be difficult to explain the times of entering and leaving the city to the Lysis City authorities. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Fang Hao and his group entered Lysis City. First, they delivered a batch of new clothes to the clothing store. Then, they headed to the city lord's mansion. He hadn't received the reward for helping Rebecca clear out the faceless ones last time. Secondly, he also wanted to build a relationship with her, which would help him develop and do business better in the city in the future, led by a maid. As Fang Hao walked down the corridor, he felt something was different. Starting from passing the city lord's mansion courtyard, there were significantly more patrolling guards than usual. And this corridor, which was previously empty, also had 2 fully armed guards stationed every few meters. The distance between the guards was also well arranged, so that even at corners, they could observe their companions on either side. If one person had a special situation, it could ensure that the person on the other side would notice immediately. It seemed that some problems had occurred in Lysis City during the days he was away, and this problem had already threatened Rebecca's personal safety, something that could affect the person in power of a city. It seemed the problem was quite serious. The maid led Fang Hao forward quickly, finally stopping at the study room. Gently knocking on the door, "Madam, Mr. Fang Hao is here." "Let him in." Rebecca's voice came from inside the room. The maid opened the door. "Mr. Fang Hao, please." Fang Hao nodded and walked directly into the study. Inside the study, Rebecca, wearing a beige gown, was sitting at her desk reviewing a stack of documents. Seeing Fang Hao enter, she put the documents aside. "It's been a long time since I last saw you," Rebecca said. "I was handling some things, and I just got here," Fang Hao said, sitting down opposite Rebecca. A smile appeared on Rebecca's face, and she pulled open a drawer, took out several heavy money bags from inside, and pushed them towards Fang Hao. "This is the reward for the last mission. I've been keeping track of it for you." Fang Hao didn't stand on ceremony and took them directly. This money was nothing to Fang Hao now, but these gold coins were the reward they had agreed upon when they collaborated. "Is the city unsafe recently? I see you've added a lot of people here," Fang Hao asked directly. Sigh. Rebecca sighed softly and didn't hide anything. "The day before yesterday, I was assassinated during a banquet. I suspect it was done by the faceless ones, so I've increased the number of people around me." Rebecca and Fang Hao's relationship, while called a collaboration, was actually closer to a friendship. Although she held the core power of Lysa's city, she had no one she could trust in the city. No one could be sure where the faceless ones had planted their spies. But she was certain that Fang Hao was on the same side as her. After all, they had collaborated to kill many faceless ones. Therefore, when her whereabouts were revealed and she was assassinated, she was willing to tell Fang Hao. What? They're so rampant now, they even dare to assassinate you. Fang Hao was also a little surprised. The 100 Cities Federation was just a form of city alliance. The opinions of the Federal Council were very important, but each city was autonomous, which meant each city lord was the local emperor in their city. The faceless ones assassinating a city lord meant they had reached the point of declaring war. It was no longer just secretly kidnapping residents and gathering intelligence. It's okay, it's not a big problem. You should also be careful in the city to avoid any danger, Rebecca reminded him. Okay, I understand. You can notify me if there's anything. Fang Hao also nodded and said. The two didn't chat for too long. Rebecca still had many documents to review, and Fang Hao also had his own things to do. After leaving the city lord's mansion, it was still early. He met Anya outside the gate. He called a carriage and went directly to the mission hall at the east gate. The mission hall was a place specifically for mercenary groups to receive missions. Fang Hao had already registered a mercenary group before and had accepted several missions. The carriage stopped in the street, and Fang Hao took Anya directly into the hall. The hall was still bustling, with many people from various mercenary groups gathered. It was already close to dusk, so he didn't know if there were still any good missions. Fang Hao was just trying his luck, while also planning to browse the night market here. Items and rare resources like multi-headed fire serpent Profound Truth 1 and Undead War Drum were all purchased at the night market. Occasionally, he would also encounter some good things. He went to the counter and asked the receptionist for the bounty missions. He looked through them one by one. After flipping through 2 pages, there was indeed one mission that caught Fang Hao's attention. Map, Demon Manor. Category, single-page map. Notes, a manor that rarely interacts with outsiders. Someone saw a demon with huge wings on its back hunting anyone who passed by. Description, a map drawn and mission information released by the Wind Wolf mercenary group. This was the only map that looked halfway decent. It said there was a manor in the wilderness where someone saw a demon with huge wings on its back. Having huge wings on its back, this description could actually mean many things. Lorana, due to being a vampire, could also spread out huge wings, and his demon puppet was the same. It was a bit far-fetched to conclude it was a demon based on this alone. But this mission was one of the better ones among all the missions, certainly better than missions like accompanying a noble young master in sword practice or investigating a man's affair. I'll take this mission, Windmill Mercenary Group, Fang Hao said to the staff member. Okay, sir, the staff member said and registered Fang Hao. Other than this map, Fang Hao wasn't interested in any other maps. Recently, even missions to exterminate bandits had become fewer. Mercenaries were also experiencing a mission drought. After registering, Fang Hao took Anya and walked out of the mission hall. At the market outside the door, he looked to see if there were any items he needed. The two stopped at a roadside stall, and Fang Hao squatted down. How much are these few materials? 20 silver each, the stall owner said without raising his head. Okay, I'll take them all. Fang Hao paid the money and collected all the materials. He continued browsing the stalls. However, in an accidental glance back, he discovered something was wrong. He was being followed. As his strength grew, Fang Hao's senses also improved. In front of a stall not far behind him, 2 men were squatting. He had seen one of them when he left the mansion, and the other had appeared on the other side of the road when he left the city lord's mansion. This was definitely not a coincidence, and even if it was, how did these two end up together? Fang Hao's nerves immediately tensed up. Rebecca's words of caution flashed in his mind. The faceless ones might already know that Fang Hao was helping Rebecca. Then it was highly likely that these were people arranged by the faceless ones. Otherwise, he couldn't think of a second enemy who would monitor him in Lysa's city. Thinking of this, Fang Hao immediately put his arm around Anya beside him, acting as intimately as a couple. Don't look back, someone is following us. The two walked through the crowd without showing any unusual behavior. The two followers not far away put down the items on the stall and stood up, following Fang Hao from a distance. It's those two. Their strength isn't high. They should be traps from here. Dealing with them isn't difficult. Anya also noticed the two people behind them. Let's go, find a deserted place, Fang Hao said. The two walked directly out of the market and turned into a dark alley. The alley was filled with garbage and debris, with swarms of flies flying around. Behind them, the two people who were following stood in front of the dark alley, frowning as they looked inside. The two stood at the alley entrance, a little hesitant. Their target, after leaving the market, had gone directly into the dim alley. This made them suspect the other party had discovered them and deliberately gone to a deserted place to wait for them. What should we do? One of them asked. The other had a grim expression and said, no choice. If we don't bring that man back, Boss Lei won't let us off. Should we call for more people? No time. This young couple has delicate skin and tender flesh. Just make sure you don't kill the man. All right, let's do that then. The two rechecked the weapons at their waists and stepped directly into the dark alley. As dusk approached, a red glow rose in the sky. The alley was even dimmer, and a homeless man snoring, slumped against a trash can, was asleep. The two quickened their pace, afraid the other party would escape from the dark alley. As their steps grew faster, the only sound in the quiet alley was the crunch of their boots on the ground. Turning the corner, the hurried steps of the two suddenly stopped. Ahead, two figures blocked their path. It was the young couple they had been following. They really were waiting, oblivious to the dangers. After confirming there were no other helpers, the two men relaxed slightly. So, it was just a rich young master with a poor head on his shoulders. Drawing the daggers from their waists, they looked at the young couple with a sneer. Fang Hao looked at the two calmly and asked, who sent you? You've been following us all day. Tell me, and you can get off work early. Heh, what's the hurry? You'll know when the time comes, one of them said. You're not here to kill me? Fang Hao heard the implication in the other party's words. It didn't seem like an assassination attempt. You're lucky. You're worth more alive than dead. Hearing the other party's answer, Fang Hao could confirm that these two were also sent by someone to capture him. Faceless ones, business rivals, or perhaps the matter with the dragon-scale mercenaries had been exposed. Fang Hao quickly filtered through a few potential enemies who might target him in his mind. The strength of these two was actually quite good. Both had reached the 5th tier level, which was considered quite good among mercenary groups. But they were no match for Fang Hao and Njia at this moment. Seeing the two approach with daggers in hand, Fang Hao said to Njia, don't kill them. I need to know who is tracking us. Okay. Njia responded with a soft sound, her foot pushing off the ground, and her figure shot out directly. Like a rapidly sweeping black shadow, she reached the two men in the blink of an eye. Bang bang. With two dull thudding sounds, the two men's bodies instantly flew backward. They crashed against the wall behind them, spitting out fresh blood. The two who were just moments ago full of momentum lost their combat ability in the blink of an eye and struggled to get up. Fang Hao walked over and questioned the two, saying, Speak. Who sent you? Tell me, and you can live. The two men's faces were pale, and they kept vomiting blood. They never expected that the beast-eared maid beside this young merchant would possess such combat power. We admit defeat on this matter. Let us go, and we will never appear before you two again, one person said in a low voice, covering his chest. This sentence almost made Fang Hao laugh. He was certainly plotting something good. He failed to assassinate someone, but acted as if he was following the rules of the underworld. Where in the world was there such a good thing? You've already attacked me. Do you think I'll just let you leave? I'll ask you one last time. Who sent you? Fang Hao continued. You'd best not inquire. This isn't something you should. Fang Hao impatiently waved his hand, and Njia, wearing her tiger fists, delivered two sharp punches to the man's nose bridge. The rest of his words were swallowed back, and his eyes rolled back as he directly fainted. Fang Hao crouched down again in front of the second person, picked up the dagger the other party had dropped, and held it against his neck. Who sent you? The cold dagger made the man shiver. I. If I tell you, I'll die, the man's voice trembled. If you don't tell me, you'll die now, Fang Hao reminded him calmly. The man looked at his companion beside him, who looked miserable, gritted his teeth, and said directly, "It was Riley. As long as we bring you back, the debt we owe will be wiped clean, and we'll also receive a very generous reward." Riley. So it was him. It seemed the Faceless Ones had indeed changed during his absence. Not only did they target Rebecca, but they also confirmed that he was the external helper assisting Rebecca. Are there others? Fang Hao continued to ask. I'm not sure, but I think there might be others. Boss Riley is never short of pawns and leverage, the man said. Riley was a boss in the underworld. A large part of the various entertainment industries was in his hands. He was never short of lackeys and thugs. Even more so, pawns like the man before him, who were heavily in debt, were plentiful. All right, I'm quite satisfied with your answer. I'll let you off this time. If you dare to appear before me again, it won't be as simple as this, Fang Hao said calmly, dropping the dagger in his hand. Yes, thank you, my lord. The man immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed twice. As for the other man who was stubborn, Fang Hao directly had Jia break his limbs. In the alley, painful wails instantly rang out. They woke the homeless man in the trash heap and sent the mice scavenging for food scattering. After leaving the alley, Fang Hao lost his interest in continuing to wander. After getting into the carriage, he returned directly to his residence. After dinner, when he returned to his room, he found someone already sitting inside, waiting for him. It was Xiao Yu, who had returned to her original appearance. My lord, Xiao Yu said. Fang Hao had placed Xiao Yu beside Riley to gather some intelligence for him. This was also the reason Fang Hao had helped Rebecca eliminate many Faceless Ones, but had not touched Riley. This time, Xiao Yu should have brought back intelligence he didn't know. Xiao Yu, what news do you have this time? Fang Hao asked directly. Xiao Yu sat down beside him and said, My lord, a leader arrived at the Faceless Ones the day before yesterday. The Faceless Ones held an emergency meeting and formulated a plan to assassinate Rebecca. Previously, Xiao Yu had mentioned that the Faceless Ones were arranging for a special person to come over. It seemed this was the person. Who is he? Can his identity be confirmed? Fang Hao continued to ask. Xiao Yu shook her head. The other party's strength is above mine. Several attempts to infiltrate and track were discovered by the other party, but the other party's build is not tall, so it is very likely a woman. Fang Hao had witnessed Xiao Yu's infiltration and tracking abilities. Her skill of blending into shadows was even more unpredictable, making it very difficult to detect. The fact that the other party had the ability to detect Xiao Yu's tracking basically confirmed the other party's identity as a hero. In this case, Xiao Yu would also face a lot of danger. Okay, I understand. Don't go back to the Faceless One's side either, to avoid any danger, Fang Hao said after thinking for a moment. Yes, my lord. Xiao Yu nodded in agreement. The two continued to discuss some details, and then Xiao Yu left Fang Hao's room. Only Fang Hao remained in the room, sitting by the bed, thinking about countermeasures. His identity had been exposed. However, the identity of the Faceless Ones still could not be confirmed. He was in the open, while the Faceless Ones were hiding in the dark, monitoring his movements. He would have to be more careful during his few days in Lysis City. It was late at night, and he went to bed and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, after breakfast, Fang Hao led his group out of Lysis City. Although the Faceless Ones posed a threat, with the protection of several heroes, his safety was completely guaranteed. Especially after obtaining the Godhead, his own strength had also improved to a certain extent. He even dared to spar with some assassins. Today's mission was to explore the mercenary mission Demon Manor that he had received from the mission hall yesterday. The large group advanced towards the target point. In Jia, yesterday at the entrance of the tavern, two women got into a fight over a man, and a lot of people were watching, the rabbit girl Millie said to Njia beside her while riding a horse. Really? Why didn't you call me for such excitement? What did they fight over? The monotonous journey immediately piqued Njia's interest. It seemed to be because of a man, Millie said. Was the fight intense? Intense. They were pulling hair and tearing clothes. Everyone from the tavern came out to watch, forming several circles, she continued. There weren't many things that could make drunkards put down their glasses to watch. But two women tearing each other's clothes would still attract the interest of many men. What happened in the end? And Jia continued to ask. Later, the patrol guards came and took the two women and the man away. I heard others say that the one who was beaten had seduced the other party's husband, which is why they fought today, Millie continued. Oh, is that all? What's there to fight about? And Jia said, exactly, and that man was also ugly, with yellow teeth. I don't know what was worth fighting over, Millie also said. In Beastman tribes, the chieftain and the elders in the tribe all had many females. Like the previous Cold Wind tribe, they even had to receive women sent from subordinate tribes as tribute every year. In the Beastman's dictionary, the strong could rightfully obtain more resources and the right to reproduce. Everything was based on the strength of the strong. Although Jia and Millie were close to humans in appearance and were also marginalized in the Beastman community, the social concepts they were exposed to were still those of the Beastmen. They began discussing issues regarding men and women. On the other side, Fang Hao and Dimmitgo were also talking in low voices. They were discussing the deployment of generals in various places. There were no more wars within the territory, and the heroes in various places also needed to be redeployed. To fully utilize the role of heroes, the group advanced all the way. At 10 o'clock in the morning, suddenly, dense footsteps came from the front. Dimmitgo immediately ordered a defensive formation. They saw several people dressed as mercenaries running out from the front. They were in disarray, their equipment messy, running in panic and occasionally looking back. Bang! The crossbow string twanged. An arrow directly pinned the foot of the mercenary running towards them. Stop! Put down your weapons! Millie shouted loudly. At this moment, the mercenaries realized that there was a well-equipped group ahead on the road. Not only did they block the escape route, but nearly 20 crossbows were pointed at them from a distance. The warning was clear. Don't. We are from the Rattlesnake mercenary group. No ill intentions, just passing by. The person in the lead explained, slowly putting down the weapon in his hand. More than a dozen mercenaries behind him also put down their weapons. But they still kept looking back from time to time, as if worried that someone was chasing them. The Rattlesnake mercenary group was considered a mid to lower tier group among the mercenary groups in Lysis City. Apart from the main team, which had a few good hands, the remaining few squads recruited newcomers. The people before them, even if they were from the Rattlesnake mercenary group, could only be from a squad. What are you doing here? Millie spurred her horse forward a few steps and asked loudly. She had a bit of a leader's bearing. The people from the Rattlesnake mercenary group were a bit confused by the situation before them. This was a team mainly composed of humans, but the one asking the questions was a girl with rabbit ears. Especially her doll face, paired with the aura of a mountain bandit, created a somewhat indescribable sense of incongruity. Miss, we accepted a mission in the mission hall and were attacked on the way, the captain of the Rattlesnake team replied. The appearance of these people did indeed look like they were fleeing. The Demon Manor mission? Fang Hao asked. The few people from the Rattlesnake were instantly stunned and immediately realized that these people were also here to do this mission. Yes. The Rattlesnake captain quickly nodded. What kind of danger did you encounter? Tell me about it. Fang Hao continued to ask. Since it was the same mission, Fang Hao was also curious about what kind of enemy the other party had encountered that would make them abandon their armor and flee. They were clearly terrified, but they managed to run out alive, only looking disheveled, not seriously injured. We were attacked by a demon on the way. It killed our horses and has been chasing us from behind, the people from the Rattlesnake mercenary group replied. Some of them even pointed to the claw marks left on their iron armor to prove the ferocity and brutality of the other party. Did you reach that manor? No, we were attacked on the way. To avoid casualties, I led everyone out. The Rattlesnake captain continued to explain. What does the demon you mentioned look like? Fang Hao thought for a moment and asked again. It has a pair of huge wings and is very familiar with the terrain here, the Rattlesnake captain said. And the team members beside him kept adding to the description. Some saw horns on its head, while others saw a long, slender tail when it snatched away the horses. In short, with their words, Fang Hao finally understood. These people didn't see the other party's true appearance at all. They were attacked and fled in a panic. What about its strength? Can you confirm it? Fang Hao continued to ask. A demon? Oh, it must be at least hero-level strength, the members of the Rattlesnake mercenary group said quickly. Fang Hao nodded and did not continue to press the matter. Clearly, these people were only focused on running away. All right, you can leave now, Fang Hao said. Oh, yes, thank you, my lord. The few members of the Rattlesnake nodded repeatedly, left from the side of the group, and hurried towards Lysa's city. After confirming that these people had truly left, the group set off again. They continued towards the direction of the Demon Manor. With Dimika and Njia present, their safety was guaranteed. The group continued forward and entered a mountain forest. In front of the mountain forest, Fang Hao and the others found bloodstains and signs of a struggle. This should be the location where the Rattlesnake and the others were attacked. However, they didn't see the weapons the other party had discarded or the dead horses. Nor did they find any enemies nearby. Passing through the dense forest, a manor with walls covered in flowers appeared ahead. It was indeed the location of the Demon Manor on the map. Comparing it with the map, it could be confirmed that this was the location of the Demon Manor. As the group approached, Fang Hao was about to release the skeleton gray sparrow to check the situation inside the manor. He saw the heavy iron gate slowly open, and a figure in a black cloak walked out. Mr. Fang Hao, why are you here? Confused, Fang Hao looked up. At the entrance, a familiar figure in a black cloak stood. Half-demon alchemist. It was him. At that time, Fang Hao met the half-demon alchemist selling his homemade potions near the quest hall. After that, every once in a while, he would deliver his homemade potions to the hot pot restaurant. They didn't have many opportunities to interact, but they were considered partners. Recently, Fang Hao could produce glass bottles and was also providing them to him. The containers for the potions changed from ceramic bottles to glass bottles. So it's you. Fang Hao also showed a smile. Fang Hao didn't know his name, but the half-demon had learned Fang Hao's name through some means. After all, Fang Hao had some businesses in the city, so it wasn't difficult to inquire about some information. Yes, Mr. Fang Hao, how did you come here? The half-demon continued to ask. Just passing by. On the way, I met a few mercenaries who were running away. I heard they were attacked by monsters, so I walked here, Fang Hao said softly. The half-demon's eyes flickered, and he immediately thought of something. Seeing that he didn't speak, Fang Hao continued, Aren't you going to invite us in for a sit? Of course. Please come in, sirs. The half-demon was quite enthusiastic, stepping aside and indicating that they could enter the manor. Some flowers and plants were planted in the manor. On a nearby wooden post, several horses were tied, and a few bundles were thrown on the ground. It seemed that these were the belongings of those fleeing mercenaries. Fang Hao, and Jia, and Demeter followed the half-demon into the hall. The others waited outside. The layout of the hall was simple. Very ordinary wooden tables and chairs, with a few very ordinary paintings hanging on the walls. Fang Hao and the two others sat down at the table and chairs. The half-demon served some fruit. You live in such a large manor by yourself? Fang Hao found a topic and asked. I live here with my mother. She should be back soon, the half-demon said. Does she work in Lida's city? Yes. Then this place is quite a distance from Lida's city. Fang Hao and the half-demon chatted casually. They had had a few opportunities to interact. The half-demon felt relatively easygoing, but he was very wary of humans and acted very cautiously in everything. The half-demon took Fang Hao and the two others to visit his manor, as well as the rooms where he usually read books and made alchemy potions. After the visit, when they returned to the hall, in the front yard, a quarrel suddenly erupted. Fang Hao and the others walked out and saw an elderly woman pointing at Millie and a group of subordinates who were resting with the wooden staff in her hand. Mother, these are Mr. Fang Hao's subordinates. The half-demon, seeing the woman, quickly stepped forward to explain. The woman turned around, saw that her son was fine, let out a sigh of relief, and also saw Fang Hao on the side. Similarly, Fang Hao also saw the woman. Miriam, Tier 10 priest. Fang Hao also knew the person who came. It was the chief priest of the temple in Lida's city, Miriam, a rigid and unsympathetic old lady. The assistant priests in the temple were all very afraid of her. Chief priest Miriam. Fang Hao smiled and greeted her. The chief priest of the temple was the half-demon's mother. This really surprised Fang Hao. Speaking of which, he still owed the temple 150 sets of assistant priest robes. He had brought them all this time and stored them in the bone clothing store, but hadn't had time to send them to the temple. Why are you here? Miriam's wrinkled face showed no good expression. Passing by. Fang Hao replied. Naturally, Miriam wouldn't believe such an explanation. The manor they lived in was very remote. There was no merchant road here, nor did it lead to any city. Obviously, he wasn't just passing by. Miriam looked at Fang Hao and the others several times before entering the room with the help of the half-demon. She sat down on a chair nearby. Miriam then said, Bakar, I brought back some milk tea. Go make some for the guests. Bakar, it seemed, was the half-demon's name. Oh, okay, mother. The half-demon glanced at Fang Hao, picked up the cloth bag handed to him, and walked to the room on the side. After the half-demon left, Miriam asked again, Mr. Fang Hao, what is the purpose of your visit? I received a bounty saying there was a manor here inhabited by a demon, so I brought soldiers to take a look. Fang Hao answered truthfully. As soon as the word demon came out, Miriam's eyes clearly changed. A hint of sharpness was added to the seriousness. So, did you find it? I found some clues. On the way, I happened to see a few fleeing mercenaries who were attacked by demons. After I go back, more people should come here to search for clues about the demon. Fang Hao continued. Soon, the matter of the demon would spread in the city. At that time, more mercenary groups would come here to explore. Finding this place was only a matter of time. Miriam's face also became more serious. She naturally understood what Fang Hao was reminding her of. Do you know Bakar? Miriam continued to ask. She didn't allow Bakar to interact with humans, but it was clear that her son hadn't listened to her. We've collaborated a few times. Collaborate? Miriam became even more curious. Bakar has a high talent for alchemy. The potions he makes are very effective, and I've been purchasing and using them. Fang Hao answered truthfully. Actually, there was nothing to hide about this matter. Saying it out could also prove that Fang Hao had no ill intentions towards their mother and son. As expected, after hearing Fang Hao's answer, Miriam's expression also softened a lot. Miriam must have known about Bakar's alchemy on a daily basis, but she didn't know about his trips to Lidda's city. Just as Miriam was about to ask more questions, the half-demon Bakar walked back with a few cups of milk tea. He politely placed the milk tea in front of Fang Hao and the others. For the half-demon, who rarely went out, having a few guests at home today was a rare lively day. Seeing that everyone was no longer speaking, Fang Hao directly changed the topic. Priest Miriam, I plan to train some assistant priests who are proficient in herbal medicine and midwifery for my territory. I wonder if they can be sent to the temple to study. All of Fang Hao's subordinate territories had established temples, and statues of the king were placed in the temples. Therefore, Fang Hao thought of training some assistant priests and using the temples as hospitals. Although herbal medicine was not as effective as alchemy potions, the price and difficulty of production were more suitable for ordinary people. At that time, the assistant priests in the temple, in the name of the king, would treat the residents' injuries and assist in childbirth, which could also better accumulate faith for Fang Hao. Fang Hao had already thought of this part when he established the temples. Since he had the opportunity, he simply mentioned it to Miriam. Miriam was a little surprised by Fang Hao's suggestion. She had thought that Fang Hao was just a young master of a merchant family with some businesses. But she didn't expect him to have his own territory and temple. But thinking about it carefully, it made sense. It wasn't strange for someone like Fang Hao, who had both financial and human resources, to have his own territory. Yes, you can arrange for them to come to the temple at that time. Miriam also agreed. The temple provided food and lodging for assistant priests from various places, but did not provide wages or remuneration. Therefore, there was no restriction on the number of assistant priests who came. Okay, I will arrange for people to come then. Fang Hao nodded and said. They chatted for a few more minutes, and then Fang Hao stood up and said, It's getting late. We won't bother you anymore. More mercenaries should be coming later, so it's best to move to another place for a while. Miriam and the half-demon both understood the meaning of Fang Hao's words. They also nodded slightly, but did not respond directly. Fang Hao and the two others left the hall and led the group back to Lidda's city the way they came. The group returned empty-handed the way they came. It could be said that they gained nothing today. The demon those mercenaries were talking about is that Bakar, right? And Jia said. Fang Hao hadn't mentioned the half-demon to her. But during the conversation, she had also heard some things. Yes, Bakar is a half-demon, so he wears that black cloak wherever he goes. I also observed in the manor, and there were no signs of demons. Bakar is the demon the mercenaries were talking about. Fang Hao explained. And Jia realized at this point why Fang Hao wanted to visit the manor. It turned out he was confirming if there were any other demons present. I was wondering. I thought he was also a vampire and couldn't be seen during the day. And Jia slapped her thigh and said. The return trip was not as relaxed as the journey there. Everyone quickened their pace and hurried towards Lita's city. As autumn approached, it got dark earlier and earlier. They needed to return to Lita's city before the city gates closed, otherwise they would have to spend the night outside the city. Before dusk, Fang Hao and the others returned to Lita's city. After returning to the mansion and having dinner, Fang Hao lay in bed, eating the fruit the maid brought. Ding! Just then, the Lord's book sent a private chat notification. Fang Hao opened the private chat channel and found that it was a message from Dong Jiayue. So far, the army led by Black Sword is still excavating and recovering the barren battlefield. In addition to excavating the collapsed temple, the entire Dark Red Land is buried with weapons and equipment left behind by the army after their deaths. Dong Jiayue was responsible for the rear support, commanding the human soldiers, and making a large number of tools such as carts and ropes. Open the private chat content. Brother Hao, tens of thousands of severely damaged equipment have been collected in the barren battlefield. Where should these be sent? It turned out she was asking where the equipment needed to be sent. Send them to Jinbei City in the Bloody Mountain Range. I will have the people in Jinbei City transport them to the dwarves at that time. Fang Hao thought for a moment and replied. Oh, okay. By the way, Brother Hao, some lords along the way have contacted me and said they also hope to join the territory. Don't worry, Brother Hao. I have told them all not to reveal the situation here. Dong Jiayue continued. From Dong Jiayue's city to the barren battlefield. Along the way, several cities of the transmigrators could be encountered. In addition, Undead have been continuously transporting equipment outwards for the past 2 days, so these lords naturally arranged for people to inquire about the situation. When they learned that Dong Jiayue was in the Undead army, they easily connected it to Fang Hao. Therefore, for various reasons, these people contacted Dong Jiayue one after another, hoping to join Fang Hao's territory. You will be responsible for them. Remember to tell them not to talk nonsense in the channel and to mainly develop agriculture. Fang Hao thought for a moment and replied. As the territory develops, he will come into contact with more and more transmigrators. With the habit of transmigrators clinging to the strong, more people will join his territory at that time. As the number of people increases, Fang Hao will not be able to manage everyone himself. This involves another function after establishing a kingdom. Establishing lords. Fang Hao can designate the governors in a certain area as lords. The Lord's book can restore the ability to devour and control the management of that area. And Fang Hao no longer needs to manage every city, only the lords in each area. This function greatly avoids the situation where there are too many cities to manage after expanding the territory. Tasks will be issued, and each area will distribute them on its own. Okay, Brother Hao, I understand. Dong Jiayue immediately received the notification that she had been designated as a lord. She instantly understood Fang Hao's idea. At the same time, a feeling of joy rose in Dong Jiayue's heart. Being designated as a lord separately didn't that mean she was promoted? She would be higher than ordinary newly joined personnel. Okay, also check those people carefully. Don't be soft on those with bad intentions. Fang Hao added. Transmigrators also have good and bad ones. Understood, Brother Hao. Dong Jiayue replied again. After hanging up their chat, Fang Hao continued to eat fruit while reading the books he bought from the stalls. Although they were not special skill books, they did contain some information about this continent. Tap, tap, tap. Suddenly, a dense sound of running footsteps came from outside the window. Fang Hao had been here for 2 days. In the past 2 days, armies were often seen performing tasks on the streets. It also meant that Rebecca had received new information and was arresting the faceless ones in the city. As Fang Hao and Rebecca's cooperation was discovered, Rebecca no longer had Fang Hao's people do tasks, but instead adopted a more extreme approach, searching the entire city for the faceless ones. This also included a counterattack against the assassination attempt on Rebecca. Rebecca also reminded Fang Hao that he could leave the city and avoid it for a while to avoid retaliation from the faceless ones. But Fang Hao was not too worried about assassination. Although his residence did not have as many soldiers as the city lord's mansion, it had 4 heroes guarding it: Demeter, and Jia, Xiaoyu, and Lorana. In addition, he had obtained divinity, and his strength had also greatly improved, enough to guarantee his safety in the city. Even if Rebecca gathered an army to kill him, he would have enough time to use the demon teleportation to return to his territory. It can be said that unless an orange or higher-ranked hero skilled in assassination came, otherwise, there was basically no possibility of keeping him. Fang Hao opened the window and looked down. He saw a team of silver-armored soldiers running from under the window and disappearing at the end of the road ahead. As the soldiers disappeared at the end, a familiar figure suddenly appeared: Lorana. Although it was just a distant back, dressed in neutral attire. But Fang Hao still recognized her identity. So late, why was she going out again? The last time, Fang Hao was suspicious of Lorana's whereabouts, followed her from afar, and found that she entered the city lord's mansion. This made Fang Hao very curious about what kind of relationship Lorana had with the city lord's mansion. He turned around, opened his backpack, and released the skeleton gray sparrow. It flew out of the window and followed Lorana from a distance. Following someone's movements is not a glorious thing to do. But Luolana's unusual behavior recently made Fang Hao suspect what she was going out to do. After thinking for a moment, he decided to see where she was going and what she was doing. The skeleton ash sparrow followed far behind, only keeping the target within its line of sight and not getting too close. The strength of a dark gold hero forced him to be more cautious, especially a dark gold blood race walking under the moonlight. Luolana walked along the empty street as if taking a stroll. Recently, there were always soldiers on the streets carrying out missions, and even drunkards and vagrants were much fewer. As she walked, Luolana arrived outside the city lord's mansion. A servant opened the gate and welcomed Luolana inside. She really did come to the city lord's mansion. Fang Hao flew into the air, his gaze crossing the stone wall of the city lord's mansion, and saw the servant leading Luolana to the garden on one side of the mansion. Fang Hao had been there before. Rebecca often sat on a swing chair by the lake reading a book. Since Luolana didn't enter the building, Fang Hao circled in the air and finally landed on top of the stone fortress of the city lord's mansion. He looked down from above, observing the situation in the courtyard. Luolana walked through the flower bushes and came to the lakeside. Rebecca, wearing a casual long dress in off-white, was already sitting on the swing chair waiting. Seeing Luolana enter, a smile also appeared on her face. It could be seen that the two were already very familiar. Although the content of their conversation was unknown, the smiles on their faces were visible, just like close girlfriends, chatting about some gossip they had heard. Fang Hao watched from the rooftop for a while. He was about to leave. Luolana's past was not happy. If she could find a confidant here, a girlfriend to confide in, it would be a good thing for her. Moreover, Rebecca's knowledge and character were both very good, so there was no fear of Luolana being led astray. Their contact was too intimate, and he was more afraid that Luolana would lead Rebecca astray. After thinking it through, Fang Hao wanted to turn and leave. But just as he flapped his wings, he saw Luolana also sit down on the swing chair. Immediately after, she affectionately cupped Rebecca's face, and their eyes met. Fang Hao's spread wings quickly retracted. A strange premonition suddenly arose in his heart. Could these two be? As expected, after the two looked deeply into each other's eyes, Luolana took the initiative to kiss her. At first, Rebecca was a little resistant, but she only struggled slightly, and then the two embraced tightly. At this moment, Fang Hao was completely stunned. What the hell? What's going on? Luolana was tall and slender, an absolutely rare mature beauty. And Rebecca further highlighted the charm of a mature woman, with a voluptuous figure, revealing a mature and noble temperament. At this moment, these two were passionately embracing each other, making Fang Hao both condemn the two for wasting resources and involuntarily continue watching. Just as Fang Hao was wondering if something more exciting would happen, the two, lost in passion, gradually separated. Leaning against each other, they lay on the swing chair and chatted. It wasn't until the night deepened that Luolana got up, and like an elegant gentleman, after lightly kissing Rebecca's forehead, followed the servant and left the city lord's mansion. After leaving the city lord's mansion, Luolana didn't rush to leave. Instead, she walked around the city lord's mansion, found two assassins in the shadows, and killed them directly. It seemed that Luolana also contributed to Rebecca's safety during this time. Knowing Luolana's purpose, Fang Hao controlled the skeleton ash sparrow, avoided Luolana from a distance, and flew towards his residence. The skeleton ash sparrow flew back through the window. After Fang Hao deactivated divine descent, he also covered the luminous stone chandelier and lay on the bed, planning to rest. Soon after, he also heard footsteps coming from the courtyard. It seemed Luolana had also returned. The next morning, at the dining table, Fang Hao saw Luolana. She was still wearing neutral clothing, but she was clearly in a good mood today, occasionally chatting about city gossip with Anjia and Mealy nearby. Is something wrong? Luolana looked at Fang Hao. From the beginning of the meal, she felt Fang Hao's gaze had been on her. You seem to be in a good mood lately. Any good news to share? Fang Hao asked while eating. Everything he saw yesterday still felt unreal at this moment. Even if Luolana had captured humans as blood slaves, or gone mad and torn down a temple, he would have felt it was within expectation. Only Luolana's change in sexual orientation was something Fang Hao had not expected. Of course, the scene of two stunning beauties was somewhat aesthetically pleasing. If two burly men with full beards were hugging and kissing, he probably wouldn't be able to eat for several days. Nothing's wrong. Do you have something to tell me? Luolana asked curiously. Perhaps because she had a secret in her heart, the usually proud Luolana's gaze was a bit evasive. I'll be returning to the territory in a few days. If you stay, take care of Rebecca. The faceless ones are retaliating against her, and she doesn't have many experts around her, Fang Hao said plainly, leaning back in his chair. Luolana frowned slightly and looked at Fang Hao with some suspicion. You want me to stay in Lysis City and look after Rebecca? What's wrong? It's not like I'm assigning you a job, just taking care of a friend. After all, Rebecca has been quite good to us, Fang Hao continued. Solitary Knight's beauty, Luolana and Tobias's loyalty to you has increased by 10 points. Current loyalty, 40 da. In an instant, Luolana's loyalty directly increased by 10 points. The magnitude of this increase almost made Fang Hao lose his balance and fall off his chair. Before, he had given her a bone dragon and arranged residence for her territory. They only increased by 1 or 2 points. As for Fang Hao as a lord, it was only because of the favor of resurrecting her. In Luolana's heart, she didn't have much trust in him. Before, he asked her to stay in Blood Castle and direct the residents to plant herbs. She didn't listen either, handing the task over to the Blood Hunters and coming to Lysis City herself. Now, Fang Hao just, after knowing the relationship between Luolana and Rebecca, tried saying something, and it directly increased by 10 points. Okay. Luolana's face flushed slightly. Right, you still need to manage Blood Castle. You can't always leave it to the Blood Hunters, Fang Hao continued. Got it. I'll go back when I have time. Luolana also replied, not choosing to ignore him. In this way, Fang Hao also had an idea. Could Luolana's loyalty increase be a breakthrough point through Rebecca? Eating and chatting at the same time. Soon, breakfast was finished. Fang Hao then took his people and went to the bone fabric shop and the Lao de Shuang hot pot restaurant. He checked the recent business and the goods that needed to be replenished. When returning in the afternoon, he saw the city lord's mansion's carriage parked at the entrance of his residence. Entering the hall, the maid from the city lord's mansion was already waiting in the hall. Mealy was chatting with her on the side, using a bandit's way of talking. Seeing Fang Hao, the two also stood up and bowed. Mr. Fang Hao, Rebecca's maid bowed slightly. This was not the first time she had delivered a message to Fang Hao, and she was also one of the few trustworthy people around Rebecca. Yes, is there something you need this time? Fang Hao asked with a smile. Mr. Fang Hao, The madam has invited you to come over, the maid continued. Oh, okay. Fang Hao agreed. Fang Hao took a few people, left the mansion, boarded the carriage, and headed towards the city lord's mansion. Before long, in the courtyard, Fang Hao saw Rebecca, who was waiting for him. Madam Rebecca, you were looking for me? Fang Hao stepped forward and asked softly. Rebecca was wearing a cheongsam produced by the Bone Fabric Shop today. The shaping design fully displayed her voluptuous figure. It seemed Rebecca had just returned from attending a banquet. Otherwise, she wouldn't be dressed so formally in her own home. Yes, a lot happened in the city last night. The guards found a hideout and want you to identify something, Rebecca said softly. Fang Hao glanced at Rebecca. Indeed, quite a few things had happened last night. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. Okay, Fang Hao replied. Rebecca nodded and didn't change her clothes. She then followed Fang Hao and walked outside. Demigia and Anjia were waiting outside the hot springs. Seeing Fang Hao come out, they also directly followed behind. Although Rebecca was just an ordinary person, she possessed remarkable insight. Seeing the lizard man covered in golden armor, she knew he was a powerful hero. As time passed, Rebecca found it increasingly difficult to see through Fang Hao's background. Especially recently, from the faceless ones she had captured, she learned a new term, transmigrators. A collective term for unexpected outsiders on this continent, including Fang Hao. When it was confirmed that Fang Hao was one of the transmigrators, those novel designs, strange ideas, could entirely explain why Fang Hao, so young, had so many thoughts. But at this moment, seeing the golden armored lizard man, Fang Hao brought her a new mystery. A powerful hero serving as an attendant was not something that could be obtained with just cleverness. Perhaps Fang Hao was even stronger than she had imagined. Oh, Demigia, Anjia, this is Madam Rebecca, Fang Hao said immediately, noticing Rebecca's gaze. The two bowed slightly, but their posture only showed superficial respect. At the same time, Fang Hao introduced them to Rebecca. These two are my companions, responsible for protecting my safety when I'm out. As you know, I can't even tie a chicken. Rebecca rolled her eyes at him, but didn't say anything more. Taking the three, she got into the carriage, heading towards the North City. Soon, they arrived in front of a building guarded by soldiers. The few people got out of the carriage and directly entered the building ahead. As soon as he stepped into the building, Fang Hao's brows furrowed. 6 bodies lay on the ground ahead, casually covered with straw mats. An ominous premonition suddenly arose in Fang Hao's heart. These are the bodies the guards found yesterday. See if these people are from the same place as you, Rebecca said. Fang Hao didn't refute. Instead, he stepped forward and successively lifted the straw mats on 2 bodies, revealing black hair. Demigia also uncovered all the remaining bodies. Without exception, they were all Asian faces. What's going on? Fang Hao's voice also became serious. Rebecca replied, they were found in a basement. When the guards arrived, all these people were already dead. From the traces, it can be confirmed that the faceless ones did it. This isn't the first time. Fang Hao's eyes narrowed, and anger rose in his heart. He was aware that the faceless ones were investigating the transmigrators. Part of the reason he helped Rebecca clear out the faceless ones was, as a transmigrator, to retaliate against the faceless ones. But some time had passed since the last time, and he didn't expect to see the bodies of transmigrators again this time. They survived hunger and did not die from the invasion and plunder of foreign races, but died at the hands of fellow humans. It wasn't sympathy for these dead people, but that ineffable feeling of anger and frustration in his heart. Those guys treated transmigrators as targets, as prey. Are there any clues? Suppressing the anger in his heart, Fang Hao continued to ask. Rebecca shook her head. No, not at all. This was also what Rebecca was worried about. All her trump cards were exposed to the faceless ones, and she could no longer obtain more information about the faceless ones through her own channels. This put her in a passively beaten situation, and she even suspected that the other party was plotting a bigger plan. I can give you a piece of information, Fang Hao said. Rebecca was taken aback, then led Fang Hao to a corner. What information? Layli, he is one of the faceless ones, Fang Hao said plainly. Layli. Rebecca's delicate brows furrowed, and an expression of disbelief appeared on her face. She naturally knew who Layli was. The boss of the West City's underground world, openly owning many industries in West City, and privately the leader of the gray area. Prostitution, gambling, moneylending, his presence was in every business. But similarly, taking down Layli was not a simple matter. This kind of desperado, if they really caused trouble in the city, would be even more difficult to deal with than those nobles and merchants. How do you know? Rebecca continued to ask. The day before yesterday, after leaving here, I was assassinated by two people. That's the information I got from their mouths. Fang Hao continued to answer. He naturally couldn't reveal Xiaoyou's matter, and could only say that the information was obtained from the assassins. Are you sure? Yes, Fang Hao replied. Rebecca was silent for a moment. Layli's matter needs to be replanned. I will handle this matter, don't reveal it. Okay. Fang Hao nodded and agreed. Killing Layli was not difficult, but the consequences after Layli's death needed to be carefully planned. Otherwise, it would cause a lot of trouble. All right, you've seen the people. Let's talk as we walk. Rebecca led Fang Hao outside. Walking out of the building, both remained silent. After getting into the carriage, Rebecca continued. So, the information about transmigrators is true. You come from another world. Yes, Fang Hao replied truthfully. This kind of conversation felt a bit strange. Even if Fang Hao wanted to say more, he didn't know how to explain the world they were from to Rebecca. If it were him, and a group of people came saying they were transmigrators or aliens, he would directly choose to call the police and wouldn't waste another word with the other party. What exactly is the Faceless One's purpose in capturing you? Rebecca continued to ask. Perhaps they are curious about our world. After all, as you know, we possess a lot of knowledge that you don't. Perhaps this is what the Faceless Ones want to know, Fang Hao said. Rebecca nodded, indicating that she understood. I will order people to continue investigating the Faceless Ones. You should also be careful, Rebecca instructed again. Okay, I understand, Fang Hao replied. The carriage stopped in front of the city lord's mansion, and Rebecca returned to the mansion. The carriage then continued to take Fang Hao and the two others back to his residence. On the way back, Fang Hao kept thinking about the Faceless Ones. He was always protected by Anjia and Demigia, and at his residence, there were Luolana and Xiaoyu. It was clearly impossible for the Faceless Ones to assassinate him. But other transmigrators clearly did not escape the Faceless Ones' clutches. How exactly can these people be rooted out? This was a troublesome matter. For now, it seemed they could only investigate little by little and find these people bit by bit. 3 days later, Fang Hao returned to his territory. In the Lord's Mansion Hall, the goblins and several fairy representatives had been waiting for a long time.